Woohoo!
Hello!
Hi!
We did it. Okay. All right, folks. Good evening. Welcome back.
Welcome front.
Welcome. Nice to have our panel back with us tonight. You recognize two of the folks from last week. That's Anthony and Steve. And we also have making our debut appearance here on Roadway Whiz Live. It's been long enough. We've been trying to get him on for ages, it seems like. But Mr. T, Mike Tantillo, is with us, representing the D.C. metro area. Welcome in, sir.
Yes, thank you. I live in the home of the late former mayor for life, Marion Shapilov Berry Jr., otherwise known as the District of Columbia.
Yeah,
Drink. But grew up in New York, so I'm very, very familiar with all the toll crossings in New York City area and how to avoid them.
Hey.
Yeah, well, that's kind of what we're here to do, I suppose. Tonight we're going to pick up where we left off last week with... We talked about New England last week, and now we're going to start up in New York State and work our way south and west from there, and we'll see how far we get. I suppose, well, let's just get right into it, because we've got a lot to talk about.
Rhode Island?
Yes, Steve, let's talk about that, shall we?
All right.
Why not? Let's do that again, huh?
That is not in this region.
Rhode Island is the most important state in that borders New York, so...
It does. I will give you that one.
It actually does. You're not wrong. All right, New York State. Before we get into New York City proper, I want to give you guys a chance to sound off on some stuff in upstate New York. We have the Thruway system, which stretches from New York up to Albany and then west to Buffalo and Pennsylvania. We've also got the New York State Bridge Authority with crossings of the Hudson River between New York City and Albany. Guys, go wherever you want with this.
All right. Well, I guess geographically it makes sense to start at the west end of the Thruway in Believe It or Not town.
Okay.
Right. So the Thruway has actually so part of the Thruway's deal is that they don't use a ticketed system within large metro areas, which they've curiously defined as only Buffalo and New York City. But what that does mean is that there are two distinct sections of the Thruway that historically always were ticketed. One which is west of Buffalo, starting just past the 219 exit, and the other which is east of Buffalo. Now, due to the recent project to convert this all to all electronic tolling, the situation with the Thruway being ticketed versus barriered has become a little bit more complicated. But historically, you actually had a separate ticket west of Buffalo that was a much smaller, shorter ticket since there are fewer exits in that section.
Yeah, the Thruway was interesting in that there were two different ticketed sections.
All right, so that's a main section example.
Yeah. The west of Buffalo, the tickets were approximately the same size, but the line items were a lot bigger. Thank you, Dan, for the ticket.
Oh, you're welcome. I've got plenty more to give away, too.
Right. So also in the area, you have the Niagara section of the Thruway, part of Interstate 190. And I believe we touched on this in the past when we had a webinar about upstate New York's interstates, but we'll touch on it again. There are currently 2 tolls on that section of the Thruway for the North and South Grand Island bridges. Historically, there were 4. The City Line and Black Rock toll plazas in Buffalo, which were removed in the early 2000s as part of a maintenance swap where the Thruway Authority gave up maintenance of I-84 further downstate and in exchange got rid of those tolls.
Which you only paid tolls going into Buffalo?
Yes.
And likewise on Grand Island, you only paid going onto Grand Island.
Right. So now Grand Island is only accessible via those two bridges. So if your destination is in Grand Island, there is no Shunpike route possible. However, if you are a resident of Grand Island, you can therefore obtain a discount because they have some mercy. If you are not going to Grand Island and are just trying to go around, you can use the LaSalle Expressway and then routes 265 and 266 perhaps to get around. Might be one of the most straightforward ways of doing that.
Tolls are per residence, I believe, are either 5 cents or 10 cents. So it's almost like you're
right.
paying.
It's a token.
It's all the name only, about the same as the Saconet River in Rhode Island, except even less.
Let's make sure we're discussing the overall Shunpike, which is I-86/NY17. So if you're going long distance, there's an entirely free route either to Albany or all the way down close to New York, depending on how far you intended to take the Thruway. But for slightly less long distances, if you're coming out into Buffalo, now you've got some decisions to make. Do you cut across a popular freeway out of Buffalo is to take US 20A east to I-390 and thence into New York 17? Or at what point would you cut down if you do? That's the one that is popular to the point that coming from my house to Buffalo, it will tell me to take 390 to 20A instead of going all the way up to the Thruway and across as the fastest route.
Yeah, and from Syracuse down to New York City, it's quite a bit faster to take 81, 380, and 80. So if you're coming from Syracuse or Rochester, you could take back roads and pick up 81 near Cortland, so you don't need to use the Thruway at all.
Yeah. So I suppose the biggest development on the Thruway in recent years has been the switch to cashless tolling, which the system is now all electronic as of November 2020. And there was one particular casualty, I think, of all of this, and that was the Exit 25 loophole, which essentially was a little trick in the system where traffic between exits 25A and 24, if you were traveling between those two exits, you paid no toll. I believe they got rid of that.
Let's discuss the history of this. So originally, Interstate 88 was intended to extend east via various means over closer to Albany or Troy. There were a couple of different alignments proposed over the years, but what ended up happening is that it ended up simply ending at the Thruway at exit 25A, which was built to accommodate it. As part of the deal to accommodate this, if you enter or exited the Thruway at 25A and then enter or exit at exits 24, 25, or 26, any one of the three, you do not pay a toll. And if you get on at exit 25A and continue south of exit 24, you are told the same as if you got on at exit 24, essentially giving traffic coming to or from I-88 a free pass because the free route wasn't built. And that has been that way since 88 was built, and it is still that way. The loophole that has now been closed is that it used to be that because it only looked at individual trips, you could save a little bit of money if you were, heading from Albany to Syracuse, for example, by getting off at exit 25A, getting off the first interchange at I-88, which is exit 25, making a U-turn, getting back on the Thruway to continue, and it would, and then you would have two separate trips, one of which, if you came from 24, would have no toll. With the all-electronic system, however, that doesn't work anymore because in this area, they no longer have any toll collection equipment over the exits. It's gantries between the interchanges. So if you do that and you get off and get back on, the system doesn't know that you got off and got back on. It'll just keep tolling you as if you had stayed on.
So for you three, that might be the case. For me, I have multiple Easy Pass transponders, so I could just swap the transponder at exit 25A without even getting on or off. consider it two separate trips. So,
Right, and the thing about that though is that the New York State Thruway Authority does now engage in what we've referred to as transponder discrimination. So if you use a non-New York tag, you will get charged more for the tolls. Therefore, that's probably not worth it unless you for some reason have two New York tags, which maybe you do if you're that dedicated.
I don't. Virginia, Maryland, and New York only.
Right. I mean, in theory, I could do this if I, for example, stole the tag out of my wife's car and took it with me. But why would I? Then she can't use it.
Yeah, so 25A loophole, the tolls around Buffalo, the main line, I think we touched on.
There's one other quirk in the toll system as well, which is the Castleton on Hudson Bridge, which, unlike any of the other bridges on the Thruway system, there is a toll specifically for this bridge crossing that's kind of baked into the what formerly was the ticket system and now is the all-electronic system. So you do, in fact, pay a toll, which is approximately, or was approximately, the same as the toll for the New York State Bridge Authority crossings, but it was split amongst both ways. So there is a little extra that you have to pay if you cross that bridge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and that's in both directions, unlike the other bridges, which are eastbound only.
Right. Speaking of the other bridges, the NYSBA bridges, what are there, 5 of them? Let's see. Bear Mountain, Newburgh.
I want to mention one more thing on the Thruway before we get off the Thruway.
Yeah, real quick.
I routinely head up to Albany, and I've become a master of shunpiking everything between here and there. So not to go into too great detail, because that's going to be a danger throughout today, but I found New York 17 is a very effective bypass up to Harriman. It moves quickly, and that's where the main toll plaza is, so you're already shaving a couple bucks off just by making it that far. 32 to 300, I will often get on at Newburgh if I need to make time, and at that point I'm only spending maybe $3 to go the rest of the way to Albany. I've found beyond there that 9W generally moves better than 32, and trying to deviate from the route generally doesn't really help. And if I stay off the Thruway, it takes me 3.25 hours. If I'm on the Thruway, it takes me 2.25 hours. So it's been reliable enough that I know when I jump off exactly how much time I'm losing. It's going to be roughly 10 or 15 minutes per segment. I can choose how much I want to pay based on that, or budget enough time to not have to pay. 9W is a very enjoyable ride for the most part. It's, other than Newburgh, the only other part that is somewhat worth avoiding is, I would say, Saugerties. It's not too hard to get around, but it does slow down a bit through there. Otherwise, it tends to move pretty well.
Yeah, and this is because you're starting west of the Hudson. If you're starting east of the Hudson, you have a much simpler shunpike, and that is the Taconic.
I will come home on the Taconic.
Yeah. Right. You can then either pay the 38 cents with a New York tag to go from B2 to B1, or you can take some back roads around that, which I have never thought it worth it, really. It's 38 cents.
9H to 82.
Yeah.
That's if you do want to go around it, that's how you do it, yes.
Right.
You can go quite faster on some of those back roads than you can on the Taconic north of 82, just because there's a lot of police up there.
I actually found that it's about a wash.
9H.
Okay.
9H
once you get stuck behind someone, you're stuck behind them. There's not that many passing zones. There's, especially in the southern half, so it eats up your time savings quickly.
Yeah, and then there's the traffic circle in the town I like to call Valatie, which is obviously not pronounced that way, but whatever.
Valatia. Yeah.
So yeah, it depends. It depends on how you catch it. You know, sometimes it'll be a wash, other times it'll cost you another 10 minutes. But again,
I want to address
it's only like, it's not even 50 cents, so it's, you know.
Okay.
I want to address a viewer question regarding the transponder discrimination. For the Thruway Authority, and this is true of other discrimination in the state as well, any New York issued tag is good to get you the lower rate. So Thruway Authority, MTA, or Bridge Authority, all of them will get the lower rate. It's a not New York tag that gets charged more.
Yeah, anything you get through the New York Service Center.
What do we want to say about NYSBA? Anything good? I will like to say that it is on their long-range plan to go cashless. The first bridge to go cashless is going to be Newburgh Beacon, which is actually being done in conjunction with the westbound bridge deck replacement, which is ongoing. So that'll be the first one. The others will follow in some order that, to my knowledge, is still to be determined, but it is on their radar for the next few years to get all the bridges converted. So you have that to look forward to.
Yeah, what I will say about NYSBA is that their bridges are occasionally useful as a partial shunpike. I know, for example, if I'm heading home from somewhere westerly generally, the fastest route often is to take 17 into 287 back over to the Hutch Merritt to where I live in southwestern Connecticut. But the toll is cheaper if I stay on 84 and come down 684 instead. And it really doesn't add that much time to do that. So I'll do that to save a few bucks on the toll, because NYSBA's toll is cheaper than the one for a certain bridge that connects Nyack and Tarrytown, shall we say.
Uh-huh.
Whereas when I lived in New York City, the other version of this too was I would use the Bear Mountain Bridge coming off of 17 instead of going into the Thruway. It's basically stay on 6, go over the Bear Mountain Bridge, and then take 9A into 100 into the Sprain that way. And that is a decently fast alternative that, again, not only saves you a few bucks on the bridge toll, but also avoids the barrier toll at Harriman that way.
And from a national perspective, the NYSBA bridges, they're a pretty good deal to get from the west of the Hudson part of the country to the east of the Hudson part. If you really wanted to shunpike those and going from, say, New Jersey, Pennsylvania to Connecticut, you'd basically have to go all the way up to Albany and around and back down, which just isn't worth it. So
I've done it once.
I'm sure we've all done it once before.
Of course, it should be noted that the time I did it, I was clinching roads. So the fact that I drove from the southern tier to Albany to cross the Hudson, it got me something in the process. I wasn't just doing it because I could.
Yeah.
I've found that if I'm going to Boston, it's even odds whether I'll just take the bridge across the Tappan Zee widening of the Hudson River, or if I'll go north, spend a bit of time but save a bit of money. At the current toll rate, $5 plus a New York tag discount is really not that unreasonable. If they were to raise that to $10 or more to be quote-unquote competitive with the lower Hudson bridges, I think I'd find myself a lot more going up at least to Bear Mountain, if not 84. But for me to go to Danbury, for example, and join 84 there, Bear Mountain costs a solid 20 to 30 minutes to have to navigate all those back roads compared to the fastest possible. I would say maybe compared to 287 to the Merritt, the Hutch, on up to Hartford, the whole thing costs as much as a half hour to have to go to 84 instead. So,
right, and that's just the nature of the roads that lead to the Bear Mountain Bridge. You can most fastly go south from it than east or north.
Mm-hmm.
So as a terminal shunpiker, I need a couple more dollars thrown on before I have the incentive to spend all that time to shunpike that one.
Yeah.
But NYSBA bridges in general are the shunpikes. They are not worthy of shunpikes. They're pretty reasonable, and unfortunately, there's no way around them.
When
Yeah. The New England Thruway is interesting to me because here we have a highway that's under the umbrella of NISTA, yet it's a short section of toll road that has its own identity, if you will, separate from the main Thruway that we know about.
The Star Trek Thruway.
Yeah, that's true.
Used to have the biggest I-95 shield in the world on the toll plaza in New Rochelle.
That's right.
Yes, that was iconic. That is gone now that they've gone all electronic.
Yeah. The toll for the NET is northbound only, so you don't have to worry about shunpiking it. Southbound, the Shunpike, I would imagine you guys are going to bring up for the northbound side is the Hutch, right?
Right. Well, that is the most obvious way to shunpike it going northbound. Is just take the Hutch. That obviously doesn't work if you're a truck, but if you're a car, that's fine. And that's also, this is a modern way of looking at it. Historically, there was also a toll on the Hudson River Parkway just south of Exit 8. And that toll, prior to its removal in 1994, was a quarter each way. So, if you wanted to go around that and you were on the Hutch anyway, you'd have to get off at Exit 7 and take a few back roads back to Exit 8, 9. But if you wanted to then go around the toll on 95 heading northbound, the way you had to do this was you would get off at Exit 16, you would then make a left and a right to head into downtown New Rochelle, into the one-way pair there. You then make the first left you can, and then you have to take Palmer Avenue. All right, here we're going to see the big I-95 field in the video. You then have to take Palmer Avenue all the way back up into Mamaroneck because there's no northbound on-ramp from Exit 17. And I remember when I was little, my dad often used to take that route to go around the toll, partly because he just liked going around tolls on principle, partly because when I was in the car, I thought it was cool, and I would encourage this. Like, ooh, we're going to go around the toll.
Well, now we know where you got it from.
but even then, it really, I don't, doing that costs so much time. It's not really worth it, especially now that you can just take the Hutch.
So for me, I'm a big fan of just reasonable shunpike. So back at the time when the toll was 25 cents on the Hutch, it was $1 on the New England Thruway. So I would probably just take the Hutch if I had a driver's license back then.
Right.
A funny little personal story about the toll on the Hutch. My dad always used to think that toll was kind of pointless, only being a quarter and just to probably cost more to collect than they actually collected. So he would always toss in 1 quarter and one piece of popcorn or potato chip into the basket.
Just for good measure.
Keep them fed. Very nice.
Yeah, and so there was that toll plaza on the Hudson River Parkway was removed at the same time as there was also one on the Sawmill, right near Exit 3 from McLean Avenue, and these tolls existed because the Hudson Valley Parkways Authority used to be an independent state agency that maintained those roads, and it needed its revenue stream. They were also responsible for the Cross County Parkway, which once upon a time had a toll directly east of the Bronx River Parkway, so would have been between Exit 7 and 8. Mm-hmm. And that toll was removed in the early 60s, though, so that's ancient business.
Yeah. Before we skip on to other stuff, there was one more Parkway toll in the New York City area, which is on the southern state between Exits 13 and 14, where the abandoned state police barracks and the Long Island Welcome Center is today. I believe for most of its existence, it was only 10 cents. And supposedly, at least the way my dad tells the story, the governor got into a fight with the toll collectors union. They raised the toll from 10 cents to 25 cents. And then a month later, the governor, I think it might have been Rockefeller, decided to eliminate the toll and told the toll collectors that, yes, you got your raise, but now you don't have it.
All right. Well, that solves that problem. All right. Well, we've made it to New York City. I know that we've got a lot of bridges and tunnels to discuss. We also have, if you want to include the New Jersey side of the Hudson, we've got NJTA to discuss.
We'll go there next. Let's deal with New York City first.
So before we get there, I don't want us to forget about our absolute favorite toll bridge. In all of New York, New York Metro.
Sponsored by Honda.
No, that's not the one I'm going to bring up.
Oh, really?
No, it is not. If I can find it here.
I think I know which one's coming.
I think he does too, but I got to find it first, though. The Atlantic Beach Bridge.
Yep.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So real quick on
The
that
patronage
one.
gene.
Yeah. So real quick on that one. What do you guys want to say on that subject?
I would just go around it. So
It's one of those unfortunate things, and I don't want to be too negative on people in Atlantic Beach, but I think there's some isms involved there. Classism comes to mind, that the very rich and wealthy folks in Atlantic Beach are connected to the rather less wealthy part of New York City, Far Rockaway, and they want to keep the bridge tolled in order to keep certain people out of their community. That's from a community perspective. From the county perspective, it's a great source of patronage jobs, and I believe 2/3 of the toll revenue that they bring in is just supporting the collection of the tolls and the folks who work for the Bridge Authority.
I think that's gone down somewhat, though. It used to be a much more systemic problem.
I will say that the toll rates are fairly steady and reasonable. It was, when I was first learning to drive a little over 20 years ago, it was 75 cents, went up to $1.25 and then to $2, and I think it's still at $2.
It is still $2, yeah, but it's cash only. They do not take Easy Pass, and that is again because they don't want to make it any easier for people that don't live there to come in. So you have to pay your $2 in cash to cross this bridge. In terms of patronage amusement, my own personal story crossing this bridge is, I, for whatever reason, thought the toll was $3. So I pulled up to the toll plaza with 3 singles in my hand, handed them to the guy, and he just said, "Okay, have a nice day." He didn't correct me or anything. So I'm sure he put $1 in his pocket from me. I realized later when I looked it up, it was only $2. Hey.
Yeah.
Oh.
They also do barcode decals. If you are anybody, you can purchase a decal for $175, which is good for unlimited crossings for a year. And if you're a Nassau County resident, you can get your decal for $130.
There you go. All right.
Now, I believe now
that's basically their version of Easy Pass.
Oh, and the last thing, when the toll was 75 cents back in the 1990s, there was actually also a pedestrian toll of 5 cents.
Hey,
I was going to say, I believe
right.
now you can cross for free as a pedestrian. So
Yes.
if you want to clinch the bridge, park on the north side, walk across and back. If you actually want to get your car to the island, just go to Long Beach Boulevard.
Right,
Yeah,
you have to go to the Long Beach or Loop Parkway.
Anywhere on the south side of the bridge, so definitely park on the north side. But yes, the pedestrian toll, it was actually just like a subway turnstile, except instead of inserting a token, you inserted a nickel. And then you better have had a nickel because there was no way to make change.
You'd have to turn around at that point. I've experienced that type of turnstile tolling on one of the bridges to Mexico, actually, across the Rio Grande. But, many episodes in the future. So.
The Rainbow Bridge crossing between Niagara Falls, New York and Niagara Falls, Ontario. It's one quarter, and it could either be Canadian or American. So obviously, if you have Canadian quarter, it's best to do that. And interestingly enough, the Niagara, which I know we kind of skipped over, but those tolls are all paid going into Ontario, but for some reason on the Rainbow Bridge, the pedestrian toll, 1/4, is paid going into the U.S.
Okay. There's some food for thought there. All right, New York City bridges and tunnels. I know this is one of your guys' favorite subjects to discuss, so have at it.
Can I talk about transponder discrimination real quick?
Well, let's let Mike have his little talk here. Go for it.
So, transponder discrimination, this is a term that I'm going to take credit for inventing it because I started using it a few years ago and it seemed to catch on. But transponder discrimination is what we talked about before, where if you have a toll transponder issued from one state, let's say within the Easy Pass network, that you pay one toll rate, and if you have a transponder from any other state, you pay a significantly higher toll. Sometimes it's more than the in-state toll, but less than the either cash or bill-by-mail toll, or in some cases it's exactly the same. They don't give you any discount whatsoever for paying with Easy Pass. I believe the origin of this was in Massachusetts, either when the fast lane system in Massachusetts became part of Easy Pass. They wanted to start charging monthly fees and were afraid that all of their users were going to jump over to Easy Pass from another state. So they said, aha, our 25-cent discount on all the tolls on the Boston extension and the harbor tunnels, we're only going to give to fast lane transponders issued in Massachusetts. We're not going to give that discount to people with Easy Passes from other states. Well, long story short, a few agencies decided, well, hey, this is a very simple computer programming exercise we can engage in, which will bring in a lot more revenue for our system. And in 2010, the MTA, otherwise known as the Triborough Bridge and Tunnel Authority, decided that we're going to take away the Easy Pass discount, which had existed from the very earliest days of Easy Pass. We're going to take it away from all the people that are not using a New York-issued transponder. And apparently, about 80% of the people who cross the bridges in New York City use a New York-issued transponder, and of those that don't, probably about 80% of those are from New Jersey. So New Jersey folks got very, very upset, and the New Jersey Turnpike Authority decided they were going to retaliate, and they took away the off-peak Easy Pass discount the next year from anybody other than folks with New Jersey transponders. And since the New York State Bridge Authority, the New York State Thruway Authority, they've all jumped on the transponder discrimination bandwagon, as has Maryland, as has a whole bunch of other states.
Yeah, it's now the norm, and when you actually get the Easy Pass discount as an out-of-stater, that's now the exception, the way things are at this point.
So somebody joked around and said, what's the purpose of doing this? The whole purpose of the Easy Pass system to begin with was it actually has its origins in the New York City area, because somebody realized we can't have every authority issuing their own transponders, because a lot of trips in the New York City area cover facilities of multiple toll authorities. And they said otherwise, if you had to do that and you had to pay with a separate transponder for each facility, everybody would have to carry around a bucket of transponders in their car. Well, some of us who insist on getting cheapest toll rates in some states actually do have a bucket of transponders.
Okay, this is what we're waiting for.
So, inside the bucket of transponders here, we have an Easy Pass Flex device from Virginia, which makes a cool little sound when you switch it to HOV mode. But since I live in the DC area, I have the Virginia transponder. I have Maryland transponder, because Maryland gives a pretty hefty discount on their toll facilities in the Baltimore area. But as I mentioned, because I'm originally from New York, I definitely want to keep my New York transponder to use on the MTA crossings going onto and off of Long Island. So I have that, and then also Florida, Oklahoma, and California.
Do any of those have monthly fees?
Only the Maryland one does, but the Maryland fee is waived if I use 3 Maryland toll facilities in 1 month. So I'd say probably 8 out of 12 months a year I get the fee waived. So it's $1.50 times 4.
Okay.
Interesting. Yeah, I ended up with a New York transponder. It took me a long time to get one at all. But recognizing that I can shunpike to most destinations in New Jersey, I need to cross the Hudson River, and I prefer to cross the cheaper crossings in New York. So, therefore, it made sense to have a New York transponder. Of those, I made sense to have a free one. So I did not want the Port Authority one, so I had to go into New York to obtain it. So,
right, and this is another bit of drama worth discussing regarding New York's issued tags, is that it used to be that you could sign up with a tag for any agency. Years ago in 2004 or 5 or whenever it was, when my parents signed up for Easy Pass, they just signed up for one directly with the MTA. So they still have their MTA tags. But later, New York decided that they were going to create a central service center where everyone would go to the same place to get a tag issued, and which agency you would get it from would depend on where you lived. So if you lived in New York City or Long Island, you would get an MTA tag. If you lived upstate, you would get a Thruway tag. People that live along the Hudson might get a NYSPA tag. I don't know if they even still make NYSPA tags. And anyone that signed up from outside of the state of New York would get a Port Authority of New York and New Jersey tag. Now, as also part of this drama where transponder discrimination was rolling out, the MTA wanted to start charging people a monthly fee for their tags as well. The state legislature stepped in and said, no, you cannot do that. We will not allow it. However, the Port Authority, since it is a bi-state agency, is not subject to this. So the Port Authority charges a monthly fee. So if you sign up for a tag from outside of New York, you get the monthly fee.
Yes.
The only way around this is to not sign up online. And you need to go and physically buy a tag somewhere they're sold and have it not be a Port Authority tag.
They could ban the fees at the Port Authority, but both New York and New Jersey would have to do that. And since New Jersey was the state that invented transponder fees for Easy Pass back in 2002, Governor McGreevey, they're not about to ban it anytime soon.
That's why I don't have a New Jersey tag.
Still exists to this day.
Yeah.
I don't think I ever asked you why you don't have a New Jersey tag, Steve. It would seem to me like a logical thing for you to do, but now it makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't either because even regardless of where you do and don't get discounts, a New Jersey tag has a monthly fee, and I don't think there's any way to get it waived. So it's like you're just paying for the privilege. Why?
I see.
I had to wait to get enough motivation to stop somewhere in New York to pick up a feeless transponder. So.
Wow. All right.
So with all that, we could talk about as much shunpiking as is possible in New York, which is mainly the East and Harlem Rivers, I think.
Yeah, that you're not getting around the Port Authority, that's for sure. So really the fun comes in with the East River bridges, as far as that's concerned.
And if you don't need to drive in Staten Island, you could use the ferry and probably get a cheaper car for hire to wherever you're going and back than it would be to pay the Verrazano toll.
Well,
The Verrazano toll.
You can use the train also.
The train, sure, or a bus, but it's funny actually. So I had a former coworker who lived in Staten Island and would commute to Manhattan, and our mutual boss used to joke with this person and always ask, repeatedly, "Hey, how much is the bridge toll today?" and the response would always be the whatever the bridge toll rate was at the time, but then adding, "But the ferry is free."
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. The Staten Islanders, they really get penalized if you want to drive to Manhattan because you either have to use 2 MTA crossings or 2 Port Authority crossings. There was some
2 MTA crossings.
Well, yes, if you shunpike the Battery Tunnel or the HLC or whatever they call it these days, but there was some talk at one point, I guess, as part of the congestion pricing scheme for Manhattan, that if you crossed the Verrazano and then used the Battery Tunnel, that you would only pay once. They wouldn't double charge you, but I think some of the bean counters realized they were going to lose revenue from doing that.
Yeah, what they did was they made it so that if you were coming in from New Jersey, you wouldn't get charged the extra toll for the congestion pricing would basically be the same for entering Manhattan, regardless of where you entered Manhattan. And the other provision that they have in that, legally written in, is that the West Side Highway and the FDR Drive are exempt from the congestion zone. So therefore, you will still be able to cross the Brooklyn Bridge and take the ramps to the FDR and then drive up the east or west side without paying. But the instant you leave either of those roads, you will... Depending on how exactly they implement this, that's another thing that remains to be seen, since this is not actually implemented yet. But yeah, this will kill most of the ability to shunpike through Manhattan that used to exist. Because I know Right. So you want to talk about shunpiking, right. Obviously, to go around the Battery, or if you prefer a tunnel, you can take one of the bridges in the area, Brooklyn, Manhattan, or Williamsburg. But the more interesting shunpiking is a little more roundabout than that. If you need to get from Queens, Brooklyn, or Long Island to New Jersey or to the Bronx or points north, going to the Bronx or points north, you can take the Queensboro Bridge, take some streets to the FDR, and then cross the Willis and 3rd Avenue bridges, depending on which way you're going, into the Bronx, and not pay a toll that way. And I know, if you're coming from somewhere like Astoria or Long Island City to begin with, traffic permitting, that only adds like 10 minutes. Over crossing the East River via the Triborough, or dare we call it the Robert F. Kennedy Bridge.
Triborough.
Yes. Well, we're not going to have this episode without this coming up.
Don't dare go that way during a rush hour in the direction of peak traffic.
Right. And this is part right. So part of the deal with congestion pricing too, and what this is intended is to sort of solve, is it also it kills this perverse incentive. You think about it. Why is it that people should have a financial incentive to drive through Manhattan instead of around it?
Yeah.
Amusing that the MTA bridge tolls, which are on the bridges that bypass Manhattan instead of going to it, are used to support the New York City subway and transit going into the city. So the actual direct competition to the transit, the East River bridges are free, but the bridges bypassing the city are tolled.
Right, and there's an interesting historical note to this too, in that in terms of what bridges in New York City are free versus whether they're tolled, you can actually draw a line basically right around 1930 to 35 or so. Any bridge that is older than that is free. Anyone newer than that is tolled. And that is simply because the older bridges were built, in various ways by the city, by, whatever arrangement, whereas the newer bridges that are the purview of the Port Authority or the Triborough Bridge and Tunnel Authority, created by Robert Moses, all had tolls funding their specific instructions. So tolls were put on them for that reason and are still there.
So when I'm coming home from Long Island, I will tend to use... Mostly I'll end up on 495. I'll take 278 to Williamsburg Bridge, go straight across into Holland Tunnel. And I'm not sure that there is a much faster way to get into New Jersey. Especially on a Sunday night, everyone's leaving Manhattan. You're going to run into delays no matter which way you go. If I stayed on 495, went through the Midtown Tunnel, I'll call it, and then tried to make my way over to the Lincoln Tunnel, I could run into all sorts of delays and red arrows telling me to go around. There's no guarantee I'll come out the other side any faster. So yeah. I have no incentive to pay a toll to get back to New Jersey when the free route really doesn't cost me anything. I just have to go find it, just know my way across the city.
The less painful or more direct route would be either to go through Staten Island or to go across the Throgs Neck and then across the Cross Bronx, depending on where your origin and destination are. But yes, these routes are also subject to some of their own traffic problems. So it's,
And they're more roundabout than the direct way through Manhattan. So I lose time savings having to get up that far.
Yeah, the routes through Manhattan, they're on weekends anyway, they're not quite as bad. Certainly wouldn't want to go that way on a weekday, but just getting into Manhattan from Long Island, I discovered in my college days when I first discovered the art of shunpiking as a poor college student that the Williamsburg was a really good way to get into Midtown Manhattan from Long Island instead of just going through the Midtown Tunnel.
To Midtown even, okay.
Yeah, the Queensboro Bridge, there's a lot of turns and signals and Van Dam Street, Gale Place, Thompson Avenue.
If you take Van Dam Street, you're doing it wrong.
But the
do this enough times, you learn better.
The Williamsburg Bridge connects directly to 278, so that alone saves you plenty of time. But then the Brooklyn Bridge, if you're coming from point south in Brooklyn, the Brooklyn Bridge is great because it gets has direct access from the BQE and then has direct access onto the FDR.
So how would you have us go, Anthony?
Yeah, let me write this down. Go ahead.
No, so if you're trying to come off the LIE and go over the Queensboro Bridge, you don't go up Van Dam Street. What you do actually when you get off is you keep going straight along the service road a bit, and you can make a right, a couple blocks later. You basically just kind of gotta, there's no one single way to do it. It's kind of a feel of the moment thing, but you're don't
going
take
up to the upper level in that case.
Well, you take one of the other streets past it, and yes, at this point I'm going up to the upper level because what you do is right. If you can make the turn on, right, you can take what is it? It's 30th place all the way directly up. If you turn on 31st place, you end up needing to make a couple other turns. But basically, yeah, you then access the upper level off Thompson Avenue.
What about when it's only flowing into Long Island?
Well, then this doesn't work.
Yeah,
but also, then why are you attempting to get to Manhattan at that time? What's wrong with you?
I certainly always found it was much faster to get off the LIE at Greenpoint as opposed to Van Dam. Never wait to that last exit at Van Dam because you'll just be sitting in traffic with everyone else who's trying to Shunpike. But you do that, take the service road. There was a little street that made a tiny little shortcut between the service road and Van Dam called Gale Place.
Gale Avenue.
Gale Avenue, yeah, sorry. And that always seemed to work well for me. It's just making that left turn onto either Thompson or Queens Boulevard that was a bear, but once you got through there, you were fine.
Right.
What else we got with bridges? Anything you guys want to get off your chests?
I think that's all the Shunpikes. You can't really Shunpike to Randall's Island unless you're gonna, instead of paying the toll, you can take the Sky Ride.
Yeah.
No, that's the wrong island. Sorry.
Yeah.
So one interesting thing to mention is the Verrazano two-way tolling. The Verrazano Bridge had collected tolls in both directions, and then in the 1980s, I think in 1986, they decided the folks on Staten Island were tired of the pollution from all the traffic backed up to pay the toll on the Staten Island Expressway. So they actually passed a federal law, was written into a congressional budget bill that banned two-way tolling at the Verrazano Bridge. They could only collect tolls going onto Staten Island, which is it created some perverse incentives for always driving counterclockwise around New York Harbor. You could use the Verrazano for free getting onto Long Island, but then leaving Long Island, you would end up getting socked with a double the typical MTA toll. So it was much cheaper for you to use Throgs Neck, Whitestone, etc. to the GW to get into New Jersey that way. Well, lo and behold, when they came up with all electronic tolling on the MTA crossings, someone realized that, well, hey, the original reason the one-way tolling was put in place is not there anymore because there's nobody queuing up. You're just driving under a gantry now. But they couldn't put in two-way tolling because this federal law from the 1980s still existed. They just repealed it last year, and they started collecting the tolls in two directions, I believe on December 1st, 2020.
Taking away all incentive to go to Staten Island whatsoever.
Well, this actually was a little bit of an issue because the Staten Island Port Authority crossings, there is a discounted toll rate that you can get if you have either a New Jersey or a New York Easy Pass transponder. It's called the Port Authority Staten Island plan, it's always the peak toll price, half of that. And the only catch is that you have to take 3 trips in a month. So if you were, and you don't have to take 3 trips in a month. If you take less than 3 trips in a month, the tolls will repost at the, whatever the rate peak or off peak would have been. But if you were driving frequently from New Jersey onto Staten Island and further onto Long Island, you would pay half the Port Authority cost and then nothing on the Verrazano. Whereas now your only 2 options are to pay half the Port Authority cost plus an MTA toll, or to not get the Staten Island discount and cut across Manhattan and then one of the free bridges. So it has increased the cost of getting onto Long Island for those who do it frequently.
Right, and this also then would create an interesting, another weird way of saving some money in the sense that because it was half of the peak toll, it's actually cheaper to take 3 crossings in a month than 2. So therefore, if you were going to end up with only 2, you could actually save money by making a U-turn, going back to New Jersey, and then crossing over the bridge again.
I did that once. I came in over Outerbridge, went up 440, went over the Goethals, made a U-turn at Bayway Avenue, back onto Staten Island, and then across the Verrazano.
Wow.
There's another couple of toll-saving quirks with the Port Authority worth discussing. One is the now on its way out carpool plan. So historically, again, you needed a New York or New Jersey Easy Pass tag, and you could sign up for this carpool plan, and there was no minimum usage and also no restriction as to what time of day. But basically, if you if you had 3 or more people in the car, you would pull into one of the cash Easy Pass lanes. You couldn't use an Easy Pass only lane, and you had to then point out to the toll collector, "Hey, carpool plan," so that they could verify that you had the required number of people, and then they would push a button or something, and you'd get the discount. And so, I had this, and it was interesting sometimes, doing late night diner runs to New Jersey and crossing the George Washington Bridge at 2 a.m. and saying, "Yeah, carpool plan."
Nice.
It worked.
Wow.
But this only works so long as there are cash lanes, and so now the Port Authority is going to all electronic tolling rather than find a replacement method. They've just been eliminating the carpool discount.
It also only works if you have a competent toll taker, which I've witnessed firsthand. It doesn't always work.
Yeah.
Yes, I think you were one of my passengers one of those times it didn't work.
Yeah. Other states have come up with solutions for this. In Virginia, for example, on the express lane network, they have the switchable Easy Pass transponders. Well, one of the ones I demonstrated before, the one that beeps. You flip a switch to HOV mode, and what it does is it still sends a signal to the toll collection equipment, but it sends a separate signal. So at the Jersey Turnpike or a road that doesn't have a carpool discount, it doesn't matter what position your switch is in, but if it is on a road that has a carpool discount, it will electronically recognize that you were declaring yourself as a carpool. So there is the possibility that some people can cheat, and this has been a little bit of a problem in Virginia, to the point that they've actually installed electronic equipment to try to catch cheaters in the act, cameras that point directly into the passenger compartment of your car. Of course, because a police officer isn't verifying it, the only punishment they can really issue is to charge you the full toll. But nonetheless, the express lane operators in Virginia have recognized that there is some loss of toll revenue as a result of this. So I think the deal is that the Port Authority just doesn't want to take that risk that they support their toll revenue. They want a rock solid 0% chance that anybody's going to violate it. So that's why they don't go to the switchable transponders. However, the MTA does issue the switchable transponders to Staten Island residents who are using Staten Island carpool plan. It's very interesting because the switchable transponders, they're only issued to Staten Island residents. I know of a New Yorker who lives up in Rochester who tried to get one of these and was denied, saying that Rochester is not Staten Island, so you can't have one. But the Staten Island carpool transponders actually will work on the express lanes in Virginia and in Charlotte, North Carolina, on I-77 for free trip for carpools.
Because it's the same technology.
Yes, exactly the same technology. I've yet to try using one of my Easy Pass Flex devices on the Verrazano Bridge. I'm curious to see what happens. I'm pretty sure they would just charge me the full toll.
Field trip.
Because it can recognize that it's not a New York tag at that point.
Exactly. That's right, what I believe. But I'm still just curious, like, if it sends any lights flashing or has the MTA police go chasing after me because I don't have 3 people in the car, and then I could say, "Oh, I'm from Virginia, so sorry."
Yeah. No, so one One other thing worth touching on with Port Authority tolls that I did want to mention is that, so the Port Authority has peak and off-peak rates, and the off-peak rates are a couple bucks cheaper than the peak rates, and on weekends, the peak hours extend all the way until 9 p.m., so it behooves you, if you're to stay in New Jersey at least until 9 to save a couple bucks. And one of my most crowning achievements as a yes, I reached this level of nerdiness moment was this won't work now that they've gone all electronic, but there was a time when I was approaching Outer Bridge and I was looking at the clock and realizing it was 8:50 something, and so I started out just kind of deliberately staying in the right lane, not going very fast. But then when I got to the other side of the bridge and it was still 8:58 or 8:59, I said, okay, I am not going through the high-speed easy pass lanes. I pulled over to the right into the cash lanes, and I deliberately waited in line behind several people paying cash so that I could so that I could get the toll. And sure enough, I looked it up later. The toll posted to my account at 9:01 p.m. at the off-peak rate, and I was way too proud of myself over that.
Wow, lifetime achievement award.
Sure.
Yeah.
Especially since my wife was in the car with me. Would have been only my girlfriend at the time, and she was like, "What are you doing?" And I just had to just trust me on this.
I can totally see Alyssa doing that too.
Thing is on one of the approach roads to the George Washington Bridge. Steve, you'd be able to confirm this, which one it is, but there's a bus stop or something for local users, and
Oh yeah.
occasionally people that would be driving by that would have the carpool plan on their Easy Pass would pull into the bus stop, pull some bus passengers and say, hey, I'll give you a ride over the bridge into the city, so they could get the carpool rate.
so there's another slug line.
Yeah, that's what they're called in Virginia, the slug lines. It benefits everybody. It's fewer vehicles going over the bridge, and the person who's driving gets a faster ride. Well, faster ride in Virginia, HOV, and a cheaper ride on the George Washington Bridge. But
yeah, they don't like this.
The bus companies tend to not like this, and in the case of the GWB, where it's an actual toll and a financial transaction as opposed to just HOV, then the bridge authorities don't like it either.
Yeah, they've cracked down on that practice. I think it's a Center Avenue ramp, they call it.
Well, it's about to not work anymore anyway. Once the bridge goes all electronic, there's no more carpool plan.
Yeah, I believe the Palisades and the lower level are all electronic at this point. It's only the upper level.
Palisades is, I know that.
Yeah, Palisades has been for a little while, yeah.
Is it all electronic in that you can go through without a transponder, or is it still all electronic? You have to have a transponder and you have to detour if you don't
I think it's Easy Pass only right now, but the plan is once it's all electronic, it will work anywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's the thing that they started doing nights and weekends, was making it so that it was Easy Pass only at the Palisades Toll Plaza, and as stated, the lower level as well. However, they always did have one lane at the lower level plaza all the way to the left, where if you found yourself there and had not followed the sign saying you need to get off and go to the upper level if you don't have an Easy Pass, they did still actually have one cash lane open as an oh shit backup.
Oh, I never knew that.
I only know this because I've observed it, that they have the lane actually at the toll plaza that says all others. Now, I don't know what would happen if you pulled into that lane without an Easy Pass, because I've never tried it. But they did have something there to deal with that.
Well, when they first started expanding Easy Pass lanes at the Port Authority crossings, they had problems with drivers stopping in the lanes, confused. Yep. It annoys the heck out of me, but you'll be in an Easy Pass lane, the car in front of you stops, and they're like holding cash out their window at a booth, just not totally clueless. So eventually, they actually replaced all the confirmation signals with just plain static signs that says "toll processed, keep moving."
Yeah.
So I think we're transitioning to New Jersey now.
Yeah,
might as well.
Yeah, we might as well. I think we hit on everything with Port Authority and New York City. The one thing that I will say in conclusion is that, yes, the remaining bridges and tunnels for the Port Authority, so the Holland, Lincoln, and GWB, will be going completely cashless, I believe, in the next couple of years. They will be doing... Yeah, so you have that to look forward to. The booths are going away on those three. The Port Authority bridges to Staten Island have already been made cashless, so this is just for consistency's sake, to complete the procedure at the other three.
And when that happens, congratulations. There is no way to get from west of the Hudson to east of the Hudson without cashless tolling, except for going up to Albany. So if you have a rental car, good luck.
Thanks. New Jersey.
Well, or bring your own tag. You can do that still.
Yes.
I cede the floor to Steve to give us an introduction to New Jersey Turnpike Authority. We got the New Jersey Turnpike and the Garden State Parkway to spend a lot of time on.
All right. Yeah, New Jersey, the tale here is going to be a tale of many agencies. So fortunately, we've already covered the Port Authority. The Delaware River has 4 different toll agencies, and I think we should just put the Delaware River to the side. That's its own topic. The Turnpike
was previously discussed anyway.
Yeah, so the Turnpike is its own topic. The Parkway is its own topic, and then you've got the various other little toll bridges along the shore, where the Shunpike is basically go back off the shore, head south, and come back again. So that I've just summed up all of those for you. But the New Jersey Turnpike has been tolled since its inception. Was originally planned to do other highways in the state. There was a corridor completely unused by any toll highway now, but you could sort of look at US 206 as what they were thinking at that point for another toll highway. The I-80 corridor was also going to be a toll highway, more or less. And then, fortunately, the Interstate Act saved us from much worse. You have toll connection to the Pennsylvania Turnpike. That has always been there. And you've got the Newark Bay Hudson County extension, which also is pretty much part of the original plan. Garden State Parkway is a bit more complex, since pieces of it were built prior to the existence of toll agencies. So parts of what became Parkway 4 were built. What had been the traffic light section between exits 9 to 11, the Toms River bypass exits 80 to 83, and most notably the section through Union County, plus or minus, from exits 129 through 141. All were built prior to tolls. All must remain toll-free as part of the agreement by which the rest of it was built as a toll road. So when you're talking about shunpiking the Parkway, you make use of those segments as much as possible. The other thing that the Parkway features that the Turnpike doesn't is one-way tolling. So depending on which way you're heading, you can get a long ride on the Parkway for free, maybe with a quick shunpike and another long ride, but then you come to a stretch where the tolls work against you and you have to ditch it for a significant period of time. The exception to this is the Toms River toll, which is a two-way toll north of exit 83. So whereas everything else is one way, and you can ride for a nice long distance through the former toll plaza that was there till the mid-2000s for free, Toms River you can't, because the Parkway had 11 toll plazas and they wanted to make sure it would be the same cost north and south. So I think we should start with the Turnpike, since the whole road is tolled. In order to shunpike it, you're basically shunpiking the whole road. The Parkway, you can get into some nuances there, and I will try not to spend multiple hours on the Parkway. But since...
All right. Let's start with the Turnpike, the easy one, I-295.
Yes.
Depending on which direction you're going. If you're coming northbound, yes. If you're going southbound and you're continuing past the Delaware Memorial Bridge, it may behoove you to cross the Delaware River further north in order to avoid paying the toll to leave New Jersey.
Right. So for that, if you're along the Turnpike corridor, now that they've tolled the Scudder's Falls Bridge, your best bet is US 1 into Trenton, get out at the last exit, take the free bridge to Morrisville, jump back on 1, and connect back into what's now 295 to continue on 95. Used to be the fastest way would be to go around all of that on what was 95. From where I am, I find it faster to come down 202, 31 to 579. I'll take Washington's Crossing and come in that way.
So one interesting quirk on the Turnpike is exit 17, which is southbound towards the Lincoln Tunnel and northbound from the Lincoln Tunnel onto the northbound Turnpike. And there was a ramp toll there, which was made one-way southbound.
Yes.
So if you're coming north on the Turnpike and you're not completely shunpiking, you want to just save a little money. As you're approaching the plaza there at 18E or 16E, depending on which toll lane you go through, you pay different toll. The cheaper one is to the right, which is you're forced by cones after the plaza to get off. And to the left is the more expensive toll for the GWB. Well, if you're going to the GWB or I-80, go through 16E, cheaper toll, follow the signs to Route 3, keep making right turns to get onto 3 East, 495 West, and then back onto the Turnpike North, and you will have, because that ramp toll is one way, you will have saved yourself probably $1.50 or so, maybe more.
Do we want to talk about the other quirk with the cones that has existed in the past, but I don't think does any longer?
Go ahead.
Yeah, so I believe this was southbound actually, that they had the ability to move the cones based on traffic demand. And what would often happen is they'd end up with a case where if you were coming from 18, because you'd come on from further north, if you went deliberately into the lane against the cones, that sometimes that lane would be programmed to read as a 16E entrance, so you might get lucky and save a couple bucks. But this was never reliably doable. It was just a quirk that some people have noticed and occasionally attempted to take advantage of.
So I think we should also talk about the rest of the Turnpike here.
Yeah, before we get
Coquito says hello and goodbye.
Before
so
I forget,
north of 295, the fastest way, depending on time of day, really, is either 1:30 or 1 to North Brunswick. It's a fairly good ride to that point. You can get at least to 18 without too much trouble. So that's exit 9 on the Turnpike. Depending on your tolerance for pain, you can get as far as the Garden State Parkway. And once you're there, that becomes the free road. So you could take the Parkway up to 22, and suddenly you're at exit 14. So now you've just shunpiked a large majority of the Turnpike. You could stay on 1 and 9 to 15E at that point. You could take 21 up all the way to 80 and bypass the entire rest of the Turnpike. So that's what I found to be the general best shunpikes around the Turnpike for each segment of it.
And if you don't mind paying some tolls, note that although the Turnpike is under one ticket system, the tolls north of exit 9 are significantly higher on a per mile basis, even more than Pennsylvania Turnpike, believe it or not, than south of exit 9. So if you are coming up from the south, you get more bang for your buck shunpiking north of exit 9. A really good way to do that is just to jump off at exit 11. So you pay the expensive per mile rate just for a couple of miles, get off at exit 11 onto Garden State Parkway. And if you're coming from Delaware Memorial Bridge, I think the toll is now $9.10 to get from exit 1 to exit 10. But if you were going all the way up to the GW, that would be $18.85. So it's almost half the toll is north of exit 10. So if you get off onto Garden State Parkway, either via exit 11 or via exit 10, taking 440 over to the Parkway, you can get all the way up to I-80, only paying one additional Parkway toll of $1.90. So you're probably saving a good $7 at that point.
Yes and no. So first, definitely use exit 10. You can take 440 right to the Parkway. It's simple. But there are 2 Parkway tolls to get to I-80 if you took the Parkway straight to I-80. Now, this is our bridge over to talking about Parkway tolls. The northbound toll at Union it takes some local knowledge to skip. You take 22 east, you head up Bloy Street, Hillside Avenue, You come back to Union Avenue and get on at 143, and you're home free for another 10 or so miles. It costs a bit of time, but the distance is relatively short. But then I-80, you have the Bergen toll, and you still have to pay that getting onto 80 as well. So if you're shunpiking, you've got to get out. I like to take 156 because 156 puts you on 46. You can get right to 80 New Jersey Route 20. And maybe that's what you were thinking of.
Yes, that's exactly what I was thinking of. I never knew this existed until last year when Steve taught me, and I was kicking myself for paying that Bergen toll unnecessarily for so many years. Via exit 156, it's unlike most shunpikes, this is an all-freeway shunpike, so there's no traffic signals involved, and it's barely 2 minutes faster than going through the plaza and taking exit.
There is a stop sign.
Yes, there is a stop sign on one of the ramps.
Yeah, the ramp onto 46 has no merge area. They're looking at replacing that bridge now, so hopefully, I mean, it's an original bridge, so it's come due, that ramp, and we'll see if hopefully that'll add some merge area to it, but that's an interagency issue to deal with. So we've talked about 2 of the Garden State Parkway tolls. Southbound Essex Shunpike. Have not found a really good one for this, because if you're heading south on the Parkway, you've got the free ride through Bergen. If you stay on past 157, you're paying a toll unless you go through the McDonald's drive-through at the service plaza. You used to be able to get straight out without doing that, but now you have to sit through the drive-through, and I don't want to misuse them that way, so I won't do it. So
you'd have to want McDonald's.
Yeah. If you're going to stop at McDonald's, fine. That's a perfect excuse. But otherwise, you got to get out at 157, and then you're probably taking New Jersey 21 at that point, heading south. It's a freeway, and then when you get to Newark, it's not a freeway. It can be painful. You may wish that you could go take 280 back to the Parkway at that point, pay less of a toll, but you avoid sitting through downtown Newark. So that may depend on your tolerance for sitting in traffic and what the Parkway looks like at that point.
Well,
make it through Newark, you can get right back on from 78. Southbound is free, and you're back on the Parkway at that point.
Back to McDonald's. A lot of McDonald's now have a $1 any size soft drink or iced tea, so that's still cheaper than the $1.90 toll.
All right. Also, let's be clear about something here. Where exactly is this McDonald's that you have to go through the drive-through on?
Brookdale Service Center.
Okay, so it's a service plaza.
It was built with one drive-through, and they allow locals to go to McDonald's also. So the 2 lanes merge for the drive-through, and it's free to get back on the Parkway. So you come out of it in the same place. It's just a question of feeding in.
Wow, never noticed this before. I'm looking at an aerial right now, and I'm wowed by this.
I had birthday parties at that McDonald's as a kid.
Really?
Back when you could go easily from the Parkway onto Broad Street. So they shut that down a bit. They gated more of it.
So north of there, you have the Pascack Valley toll. I know we're working south. Let's not forget that one. That one, if you're coming from the New York Thruway, you would definitely want to just use Route 17 instead of getting on the Parkway there.
Yeah, that's what I do now. Yeah.
But even if you're coming from the bridge over the Tappan Zee section of the Hudson River, you can stay on the Thruway past 14A to exit 15, go down Route 17. You will pass under a toll gantry on the New York Thruway, but that is the Spring Valley toll, which is only for trucks.
Capiche? So
get charged as a passenger car.
You have the other option of either 9W or the Palisades Parkway, and then you take the PIP south to 80, and that'll take you over. Yes,
and then getting from 80 onto the Parkway south, you don't pay Bergen toll.
All right, so we've made it down to a fun one, Raritan.
Yeah.
Raritan for some Raritan.
The gateway
it's my favorite one to Shunpike. It's the one I do the most often out of all of them. You get out to US 9 South, you follow 9 South, then you do something I'm not going to say on air, and you're back on the Parkway.
But this is the one that you do the most often.
It is, but this is the one that's a bit sketchy, and I don't want to put it out there. So the official word is I don't do it, and the highest up way back on the Parkway that they want you to consider doing would probably be at 120. But it's not nearly as easy to get there.
Okay. But you're getting on well before that. So.
I'm getting on before that in a way that I'm not going to publicize or encourage our viewers to do, because it does pass a sign that says you shouldn't do it.
Okay, then.
If someone else wants to reveal it, I can put the burden on them, but maybe that's giving you enough information to figure out which way I'm going.
Yeah, if you're smart enough, it's a puzzle for the viewer.
Says you should not do it, that's okay. Shall not, I'd worry about that. But I'm not going to feel it either.
In my experience, I have seen many people do it, and I have never seen anyone get caught for it. And part of the rationale is following the sign that says official use and academy parking only. If you see a cop and you're not sure, park for the bus, walk over to the bus. Once the cop goes away, get back in your car and keep going. But again, I'm not going to name where this is.
Well, I think he's kind of dropped a hint, though. But
that's as most I'm saying.
Yeah. Okay. What else we got for the Parkway, Steve? Anything else you want to bring up?
Oh yeah, I want to keep going all the way down the
Let's
Parkway.
keep going.
We've still got more than half the Parkway to go.
Yeah, let's go.
The Asbury Plaza is by far my least favorite, because I have yet to find an effective Shunpike of it. I end up on 9 all the way out of Tom's River if I'm going to do that. So I'm opening this up to other people if they've found better ways to Shunpike that one northbound.
I've never even tried to look for a way to do it. So.
I mean, you could cut over to 18 and jump onto 9 from 18, and then you're not on non-freeway roads for that long.
I think the farthest up you can get on the Parkway also is impacted by the Toms River toll, and so I'm shunpiking both of them at once by being on 9. And the time it takes to get over to 18 is generally not worth it.
Gotcha. Well, yeah, I guess if you were coming from Belmar, Asbury Park, or any of those areas, then yeah, just jump on 18. But if you're coming from further south, then you're probably stuck with 9.
Yeah, you could take 79 to 18, but that's minimal time savings over just staying with 9 at that point. I've tried everything, because in college I dated someone in Toms River, so I tried 9, 34, 79, 18, you name it. I looked into it, and there's no great way to get around both of those. Now, Toms River is only half the amount of Asbury, so if you have a little higher pain threshold, you could pay the 1. You can go all the way up as far as 33, 66. You can get on 18 from there and back to 9 that way.
Gosh, I mean, I pay 75 cents for a date.
That's a deal breaker. Sorry, honey.
Yeah. I learned a lot of Shunpikes dating her way back when.
Just don't try to date someone from Staten Island.
No, red flag right there. Living in Staten Island is automatically a red flag. But Toms River, again, the issue there is if you're going to Shunpike it northbound, there's really no good way to get back on before you have to pay a toll again to get back off. So that's the one place where, because it's a two-way toll, they've got pretty effective toll control on that whole section of Parkway.
Right, and it's worth noting in general that, yeah, a lot of these free rides on the Parkway only exist because of the one-way tolls. That it used to be that, most of these free rides were not historically free. But what happened is when they one-wayed the tolls, they never added ramp tolls to make up for it.
They were all a closed system.
The Parkway was a full, I like to call it a zone system. If you enter a certain zone, you basically have to pay one toll, either at the main toll plaza or at a ramp.
Not true. Not true. There are places where there always were free rides.
I know. But the when they converted the mainline toll plazas to one way, if there was a ramp like right next to the main line, like exit 159, for example, they converted the ramp toll to one way and made it equivalent price in the toll direction to the mainline toll plaza. But a lot of other places, they just kept the two-way ramp tolls. So there's actually quite a few places where if you are approaching one of the old toll plazas in the non-toll direction, it's cheaper to stay on the Parkway than it is to get off at an exit. Because the exits have an exit toll, because you used to be trying to capture people getting off before they get to a mainline toll plaza, but that ramp toll is still there, but the mainline toll plaza is not there anymore. So
exit 150 versus...
Yeah.
And there was one other one, 145, they made one-way tolling also, which is not near the toll plaza, but because it connected to a major interstate, they made it consistent with the rest, and I believe it's now free to get off northbound because you've already paid the Union toll.
That's a pretty recent change.
Yes.
And that plaza is actually in the Essex zone, so to speak, but I think one of the rationales is because that plaza was backing up onto the actual Parkway mainline itself.
Yes.
So it made more sense to go that direction. But yeah, I mean, the vast majority of people that are driving these roads, they're just following their GPS. Their GPS says, take this exit, and it has a toll on it. They're going to do it. So it's only those of us that are in the know that are really benefiting from all this shunpiking advice.
So back to Tom's River, if you're heading southbound, you got to get off at exit 100 again. Your best way is probably 34 to 70 to 9 at that point to get back. It's not great. You're almost better off just paying the Tom's River toll. If you've been shunpiking thus far, you can pat yourself on the back and say, I did the Parkway for less than $1. But
yeah, I don't shunpike if it's less than $1 saved.
Yeah, Brick is not fun to sit through on Route 70. So I'm a little less... I'm not going to preach that one as hard. Now, the southern stretches of the Parkway, if I'm going that far south, in order to shunpike, I'm going a completely different route. I'm going the Turnpike shunpike to 295, and then I'm taking 55 to get down to the southernmost reaches. So at that, or 206 if I'm going to Atlantic City, for example, take 206 to 30. So I really don't have shunpikes for the southernmost couple of tolls on the Parkway because I ditched the whole system at that point.
I mean, it's really a lot of US 9 at that point.
Unless you're local.
Yeah, there are a couple here and there. What's interesting is that where Route 9 crosses I guess it's the Mullica River between exits 50 and 48. Mm-hmm. That is one place where 9 and the Parkway are one road, but there's no toll on that. So that's a pretty key system there. The New Gretna toll, which is just north of there, you would need to get off at Route 9. The key thing for this part of the Parkway is there aren't as many ramp tolls, so you get off at exit 50, take 9 to 539, and then at 539, which is just one exit further north, there's no ramp toll going north.
Yeah, 48 to 50 free movement is because there's an overlap with Route 9. So they would not put a toll on those two.
There's also a similar situation, an overlap with Route 9 between exits 29 and 25, but this was not historically the case.
Right.
Historically, the Beasley's Point Bridge on Route 9, which that's a whole other story that I'll let someone else tell, but they moved 9 temporarily onto the
right. It's very permanently temporarily, and there is actually a toll on that section southbound, not northbound.
Right.
Interestingly enough, the total opposite advice of what was given earlier in this program for the shore bridges applies here, is that northbound there's no toll. Southbound, you can bypass this toll by going over the Route 52 bridge into Ocean City, the 9th Street Bridge, heading down the streets in Ocean City to 34th Street, over the 34th Street Bridge back onto the mainland and then getting onto the Parkway there. So neither the 9th Street or 34th Street bridges in Ocean City, New Jersey have tolls, but you're bypassing a section of the Parkway that does, which the next real alternate route to that, going west, you would have to go...
You're taking 50 at that point.
Yeah, you'd have to get off the Parkway in Mays Landing, not using the Atlantic City Expressway, and then coming down 50.
Not really. Yeah, not a great alternative. Neither one of those are great alternatives. So Beasley's Point was a privately owned toll bridge that predated the Parkway, so that was one of the U.S. highway crossings that has always been tolled with no free alternative on the U.S. highway system. So that's why they have no issue when that closed and has now been demolished of rerouting 9 onto the Parkway, because there's no change in the condition of 9 being tolled on that bridge.
Right. Well, that and the rule that you can't have a toll on a U.S. highway without there being a free alternative is a little squishy anyway. Which we can discuss when we get to Delaware. But in the meantime,
it gets squishy on bridges mostly. So major bridge can be tolled on the system.
Right.
That's
but
totally.
in the meantime, so let's touch on the Atlantic City Expressway, aka the road a lot of people think should be 76.
Yeah, so let's do this. Let's do it this way. Let's use the ACX as our conduit to get over to Philly. But before we do that, guys, do you want to mention anything about the Cape May County Bridge Commission?
What I said before, just there's enough other free bridges that the way around them is get off the islands, go around on the mainland, and back onto the island again.
Yeah.
And speaking of Cape May, the Cape May Plaza on the Garden State Parkway, we forgot that one, but that's northbound only, and the exit just south of that toll plaza is southbound exit, northbound entrance only, but there's a service plaza between the exit and the toll plaza. So go into the service area in the median, make a U-turn, get off at 17, cut over to 9, and then you have to take 9 up to exit 25.
Yep.
Gotcha. All right,
So,
ACX.
A toll road run by an agency whose primary mission is not running toll roads, and that therefore has some real quality signage.
Oh yeah.
Quality.
Yeah, I mean the Shunpike for that is US 30 basically, and there's not too much else to say there really.
Or 322. It both
depending on where you're going.
Pros and cons.
Yeah, depending on where you're going.
Yeah, if you're heading south from Philly, you're gonna go from 76 onto 42. It's most natural to stay on 42 into 322. You get more traffic lights that way versus 30, but 30 also goes through Hamilton. It's undivided versus divided. I don't know that one of them is significantly faster than the other at any given time of day. It may just depend.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then coming from DC, some people will go up 295 and make crazy U-turns to get to the Atlantic City Expressway. I find it's just easier just to take 40 across.
Yeah, at that point, just take 40. You're
NJ60.
Yeah, NJ60. Yeah, so there are two mainline plazas. There's the one in Pleasantville that we just went through on the video, closer into Atlantic City, and then there's the one out by, what is that, Mays Landing out that way? The $3 toll, whichever one that is. I forget the name of the town that's in.
That's Egg Harbor, I think.
Egg Harbor, okay.
Right, and that's the one where they're grabbing money from everyone heading to Atlantic City.
Right, that's the real...
Even people who came off the Parkway. Right, because that's the other thing, too, is that there are a lot of people that use this road only from the Parkway heading east, if they're coming to Atlantic City from New York as opposed to from Philadelphia.
Yep.
So the Atlantic City Expressway, aside from tolls, one interesting thing about it is for the longest time it was 3 lanes heading eastbound, but only 2 lanes heading westbound, west of that toll. And the joke was that everybody would head out to Atlantic City at the same time on Friday and Saturday nights, and they'd leave spread out over a much longer time period when they lost all their money. So they needed to It was a much bigger surge of traffic heading eastbound than westbound.
Ah,
Oh yeah.
I see.
Are there any pieces of the AC that you can drive for free? I think there are a couple, depending on how you use the service areas.
Yeah, the ACX is tricky because there aren't that many. Like, we talked about a lot of movements on the Parkway that we could use without toll, but the ACX is a lot trickier because of
The Expressway they haven't gone to one-way tolling at the mainline plazas. There aren't as many exits, at least as on more northerly on the Garden State, and they do have ramp tolls, so they're pretty robust about that.
I think all the tolls are eastbound off, westbound on all these ramps. So, right, once you're on the highway, you're paying a toll to exit, and if you don't exit, you're paying a toll to have not exited.
One interesting quirk with Easy Pass is they do say that if you are heading west out of Atlantic City and you pass through that mainline toll plaza in Egg Harbor, and then you get off at one of the local exits to get food or gas or something, when you get back on and you go through the ramp toll, they don't charge you for that if it's within 2 hours. So they're not penalizing you for getting off and using local businesses, which is surprising because you'd think they'd want to encourage people to use their own service plaza, the Farley Service Plaza, where they're taking a cut of the money.
As far as the Farley goes, it is 4 or 5 miles east of the previous exit at 54. So by the time you get there, U-turn and go back to Shunpike, you probably you've paid more in wear and tear and gas just to do that than you would have if you just paid the toll to get out at that ramp. It's not like the Parkway, which is like a mile beyond the exit.
Okay.
All right.
So that's ACX for you guys, and we are now in Metro Philadelphia. I think
Let's play Washington across the Delaware.
Yeah. So, we already talked about all the Turnpike stuff, right? I think we said everything we wanted to say there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
As far as New Jersey Turnpike is concerned, but there's this other turnpike in this other state.
Yes, that's right. Thank you, Anthony, for reminding me. Because we have, in the great state of Pennsylvania, we have the Act 44 Turnpike in Pennsylvania. So we have that. I've also put up the other highways on the screen here and other agencies that might be relevant to us. They're the bridges over the Delaware River. We already talked about the ACX and the Turnpike, so...
Where's DRBA in all this?
It's not exactly Philadelphia, so I left it off of there.
These are
Careful, Steve. You don't want to send Dan on another 10-minute rant about how you missed a shield.
I do, because once you've got the Barry, which is DRPA, it functions with the Delaware. Oh, got it.
Steve,
Bridge.
Steve, you can take your Durba shield and shove it.
If I had one, I would gladly show it off right now.
Okay. But Pennsylvania Turnpike. Let's start there.
I've heard that home can be there.
I know it's Steve's favorite toll road.
Yeah. Definitely.
So this thing called Act 44, which is Pennsylvania basically decided they were going to toll I-80 and take revenue from both the Pennsylvania Turnpike and I-80 and use it to support other PennDOT expenditures, including transit in Philadelphia, SEPTA, and Pittsburgh, the Port Authority of Allegheny County. Now, the feds said you can't do that. You can't toll I-80 and move the money to transit. You have to spend it on improvements. I guess they could be transit improvements, but they have to be on the I-80 corridor. And Pennsylvania was unwilling to do that, so the feds basically said no. But they never repealed Act 44, which meant the Pennsylvania Turnpike was responsible for the full amount of this subsidy to PennDOT. And therefore, they've had to raise the tolls every year, I think, since 2005 or 2006. The tolls are just ridiculously high. And the finances are not that great at Pennsylvania Turnpike Commission right now. They've had to take construction projects, and spread them out a simple ramp project connecting I-95 and the Pennsylvania Turnpike took like 10 years because...
And they've only built a third of it.
Yes. I will say that the Pennsylvania Turnpike, on a statewide basis, it's very busy between Pittsburgh area and infamous Breezewoods, where a lot of trucks get off to head towards Baltimore and D.C., and a little bit less busy from there to Harrisburg, where a lot of the trucks get off to serve New York via I-81 and I-78.
At Carlisle there, yeah.
Between Harrisburg and the Philly exurbs, the Turnpike is empty because nobody uses it.
Unless you're going to Philadelphia.
And even then, there are other ways that are cheaper. In fact,
283.
If you're coming from Ohio to Philadelphia, it is actually only maybe 15 minutes longer to take 80 all the way across to the Northeast Extension, and you pay like $7 instead of $37.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, the other thing there too is right is if you're heading to New York City, it's faster to head up 81 to 78 anyway, even tolls notwithstanding. So you have really no reason to stay on the Turnpike at that point unless you really like paying tolls or are trying to clinch it.
Yeah. Believe it or not, it's actually not that much faster. It's maybe only 10 to 15 minutes. The Turnpike, you can actually make pretty good time on it because it's pretty empty and it has a 70-mile speed limit the whole way, as opposed to 78, which can be a drag in some places.
Yeah.
Because all the trucks are going that way because they don't want to pay the toll.
Yeah.
In fact, some people will even go so far as to dip down into West Virginia and Maryland to bypass the tolls. It is not unheard of if you're certainly if you're going to D.C. area to take I-79 into Morgantown, to 68 East to get to D.C. Baltimore. But also there are some folks that will take I-68, I-70 across Maryland to Baltimore and north on 95. And even if you don't shunpike any of those tolls, which the Delaware one is ridiculously easy, why wouldn't you? It's still cheaper than the Pennsylvania Turnpike.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Philly area specifically. What can you do to shunpike once you get east of King of Prussia and the freeway on 202 ends, what can you do to shunpike 276?
I mean, other than taking 76 to 676, which, may or may not work out so well depending on traffic.
And that's the problem because New York and New Jersey generally have fast arterial roads compared to the freeways, whereas in Pennsylvania the arterial roads are painfully slow. So your options are kind of limited.
Yeah, the problem with that section of the Pike is that there isn't a relatively parallel high-speed arterial. And you see this also as a problem along the Northeast Extension, too. Like, there's no real good alternative there.
309 maybe, but
309's
I would use 309 for at least the southern half of the Northeast Extension. My family goes to Pennsylvania Dutch country routinely, and so they'll use the Turnpike to 276. If I'm going there shunpiking, I'm going to be stuck on 202. I don't even know that there's a different way. Now they've at least built the 202 Parkway. It's a bit faster, bypasses a lot of those towns, but you're still stuck going through Norristown and King of Prussia.
Well, and the 202 Parkway is still sluggish because, they didn't build it as a freeway, and,
right.
You will get stuck behind people that are not going as fast as you might otherwise like to.
They had to have lanes for the bikey wikies.
Right, and a lot of it's just 2 lanes, so you can't pass these people. Right.
Yeah.
But
the 276 section is definitely not easily shunpikeable locally.
476 a little easier. You have 309, as was mentioned. You have 33 north of I-78, and through the Scranton-Wilkes-Barre area, you can always take 81.
Yeah, for example, the section through Scranton, like when you're following 81 north and you have that overpass that goes over the Northeast Extension main line, every time I look over at the Northeast Extension, there's no cars on it because everybody's on 81.
Right, and the Northeast Extension from Clark Summit down to that area, yeah, there's very little traffic on it for that reason. You just use 81, might as well.
Yeah, and by the way, that section
bypassing any congestion.
Yeah, and by the way, that section from, say, Wyoming Valley on north to Clark Summit, that's actually one of my favorite drives. I think probably it has to do with how there's nobody else on it except me every time I go that way.
It's also scenic, though.
It is.
And a lot of 476 is scenic, but the northern end definitely has some charm to it.
Yeah.
It's also an interesting section in that they actually have dropped the tickets there, and they've just put barrier tolls between the interchanges. So there are still no free rides, but if you get on at Clark Summit and head south, you will pass through a couple of barrier tolls before the ticket section actually begins.
I want to say that the Clark Summit Plaza was put in originally because that was not originally the north end of the Turnpike as they envisioned it. So they kind of passed off an interchange toll as a mainline toll in that case.
Well, and you can see that in the geometry in the area clearly as well. That the northeast extension, it crosses the high bridge, and then it makes a very sudden and sharp turn, which would have been part of the Trumpet. But if before that turn you follow the trajectory, it feeds right into 81. And in fact, that section of 81 just north of there was built on the right-of-way that was intended for the Turnpike. So there was kind of an interception play there.
Yeah.
I could see what looks like a stub of what would have been the southbound roadway, or maybe the exit ramp merging into the southbound roadway just south of there also.
Yeah.
They're using it for truck parking.
You guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but doesn't the PTC have a plan to build those high-speed connection ramps? Like from northbound to northbound and southbound to southbound?
They're actually planning to reroute 81 onto the northeast extension there.
I heard that too, yeah.
At Clark Summit and then somewhere further south. And actually there's been some talk of PennDOT actually buying out the Turnpike so they could just eliminate the tolls on that section completely. But there used to be, obviously, a ticket system going all the way up to Clark Summit, but the northern end of the ticket system was just a little bit north of the Wyoming Valley exit. And when they put in the Kaiser Avenue interchange, which is much newer, they kind of shook things up and decided to put in all the new plazas. So all the Clark Summit, the one just south of Kaiser Avenue, and the one between Wyoming Valley and Wilkes-Barre interchanges, those are all brand new as in 1990s as opposed to 1940s.
Yeah, so getting back to the Philly area, I think we pretty much covered the mainline Turnpike and the northeast extension, right? As far as that goes. And then once we get through that, we got the bridges over the Delaware River next, right? I haven't skipped anything, have I? So I suppose as far as bridges are concerned, the toll rate that you pay going into Pennsylvania depends largely on the agency that runs the bridge that you're crossing. So the King Bridge, as far as toll rate, would be the one that the PTC operates. Shocker. And then you have the let me put it up on the screen here. You've got the Delaware River Joint Toll Bridge Commission up by Trenton. You've got the Burlington County Bridge Commission. You've got the Delaware River Port Authority also in the mix in the Philadelphia area. The Burlington County
it's
Bridge
like the Hudson River, basically, in that you there's no way to not pay a toll south of the state capital. It's funny how that works.
Yeah. Right. So the Lower Trenton Bridge, aka the Trenton Makes Bridge, is the southernmost free bridge on the Delaware. So if you want to Shunpike completely, you got to go all the way up there. Otherwise, I would highly recommend crossing at one of the Burlington County bridges, the Burlington Bristol or the Tacony Palmyra. Those have the lowest rates of the bunch.
And there's quite a few people that do that. They'll use the Delaware River, the Burlington County Bridge Commission to cross the Delaware River into Philly, and then they'll come back east on one of the Delaware River Port Authority ones, which you don't pay a toll going back into New Jersey. That is evidenced if you look at the Tacony Palmyra Bridge. You'll notice that there's actually 2 lanes in the toll direction going west into Philly, but only 1 in the non-toll direction. And fun, interesting, random fact about this, the Burlington County Bridge Commission, for some reason, up until fairly recently, actually accepted checks as a form of toll payment.
Checks?
Yeah, so you could write out a check to the Burlington County Bridge Commission and hopefully have it written out before you get in the car and drive up to the plaza. Otherwise, you'd be an annoying person who's holding up the whole line. But yes, you could pay by check.
So who would you pay to?
Now that's old school.
That's what I would want to know. So you would write a check for what, $2?
Yeah, I guess.
Wow. Okay. I don't know that I've ever heard of an agency accepting toll payments by check. That's a different way to do it.
Oh, it was very clearly stated on the website, and then it went away. Probably, I would say, within the last 2 to 3 years.
Wow. Okay.
I mean, you can pay tolls by check if you get a bill in the mail, often, but not at the toll plaza itself. That's something.
Yeah. So that's kind of the difference there between rates. Like, you're paying no matter what, but depending on which bridge you go across, you might have a very different rate than if you go to the next bridge down. Like, for instance, I think I don't know this for certain, but the toll rate for the Tacony Palmyra is significantly less than that of the Betsy Ross, I think.
If you have Easy Pass, it's $3 for the Burlington County bridges, and it's $5 for everything south of there.
Okay.
If you don't have Easy Pass, it's $4, and then the dollar savings to sit in additional surface street traffic instead of taking one of the freeways may not be so worth it. But if you're a commuter, you'll have Easy Pass.
Yeah, and the Delaware River Joint Toll Bridge Commission, I mean, some of these are just so ridiculously easy to bypass.
Yeah.
The Joint Toll Bridge Commission actually operates the free bridges. They call them toll-supported bridges because the tolls from the toll bridges support the maintenance of those free bridges. But you have Northampton Street next to US 22 and I-78 up in the Phillipsburg Easton area. You have the Trenton Makes and the Calhoun Street in the Trenton area. But the Delaware River Joint Toll Bridge Commission tolls are generally pretty cheap, and they have not... in the 1990s and into the 2000s, they had the southern crossings. So in Trenton and Phillipsburg, those tolls were only 50 cents paid going into Pennsylvania. And the northern crossings up near I-80 were $1. And at one point they decided, probably in the early 2000s, let's harmonize the toll rates. They made them all 75 cents. And then they had a toll increase to raise them up to $1. So on I-78, for example, the toll is now it's $1, which is still pretty cheap. But on 80, the toll is $1, and 25 years ago it was $1. So it really hasn't gone up very much, although there is a toll increase in the works. Anybody who does not have Easy Pass would pay $3, up from $1, so that's a pretty hefty increase. And then Easy Pass would jump from $1 to $1.25 and then to $1.50.
So, discussing Shunpikes there, we've touched on Trenton. Now that Scudder's Falls is tolled as part of the rebuild, whereas it wasn't tolled before, and I don't know what permission they had to get to toll an existing free interstate, but they did it, and so now we've got Washington Crossing right there.
I know that makes Steve happy.
What's that?
I know that makes Steve happy.
Oh, right, yeah. Well, they don't need permission because remember what we discussed regarding Rhode Island last week is that if it's a bridge, you're allowed to toll a bridge for the sake of maintaining or funding that bridge.
But that's been a relatively recent development that opened that up, and Scudder's Falls was being replaced before that point. But maybe
I'm pretty sure that provision's been in the law for a while.
Well, that provision is what allowed them to toll the Fort McHenry Tunnel in Baltimore in the 1980s. So that's been around for a while.
Right.
Okay, so they were just using the existing.
Thankfully, they actually are using it to toll a major bridge, unlike Rhode Island, which is using it for overpasses and creeks.
So 202, you've got the New Hope Bridge, you've got the Center Bridge Stockton Bridge, which is the actual name of it. Then you've got a few more free bridges. We've touched on 78 and 22. 80 is the one where I end up paying a toll because the one below it is also tolled, and to have to go all the way down to Belvedere and all the way back is not worth it. And the next one north is Dingman's Ferry, and is way out of the way. And Milford Montague Bridge is also tolled. Once you're up to Milford Montague, you can Shunpike up to 84 on the New Jersey side and go across that way. But really, the I-80 bridge is the one I found no good alternative for, unless you're going. If you're going a different way, just go there to begin with. Don't try to cross at 80.
Yeah, if you're coming out of New York City and you want to take 78 across, that might be a better alternative. Then you can Shunpike at Northampton Street into Easton, get onto either 22 or 78. Well, 22 and then up 33 to get back to 80.
Right.
That's it for bridges, right, guys?
Yeah, so we've covered what we need to cover here.
Yeah.
I'm glad we mentioned Rhode Island also.
Yeah, I'm glad we got our reference in for the night. That's good. Where do we want to go from here, guys? We want to go Western PA or head south to Delaware?
Right. So Pennsylvania has other toll roads.
Yeah, let's go there first. Yeah.
See, I voted the other way because Delaware. Well, actually, no, they both are gateways to more tolls, whichever way you go from here. It's a country of toll roads. We got to get used to it.
Right. Well, we have the rest of Pennsylvania and Delaware to discuss for tonight, so we just discuss them in whichever order, really.
Well, let's do Western PA first, and then we'll decide what we want to do after that.
So
Okay.
other toll roads are fairly new compared to the Pennsylvania Turnpike main line. There's 4 of them. There's I-376, which was formerly Turnpike 60, Turnpike 43, Turnpike, was it 576? And
576, yep.
And each of these were extensions to the Pennsylvania Turnpike, although not all of them actually connect to the Pennsylvania Turnpike.
Not yet.
But these are all using barrier and ramp tolls as opposed to ticket system. And interestingly enough, on the entire Pennsylvania Turnpike, for some reason, although they were one of the 7 original founders of EasyPass, it took them forever to get linked into the EasyPass system. The mainline ticketed system was on EasyPass before any of the barrier tolls. So for several years, I think into 2004, Clark Summit and Kaiser Avenue on the Northeast Extension did not take EasyPass, but south of there did, as well as all of the extensions in Western PA, 60, 66, and 43, they did not accept EasyPass, which was kind of annoying.
Right. Well, and a lot of 43 wasn't built yet at the time. There have been a couple of major extensions to that have opened since then.
So 376 is relatively easy. You just take 79 if you want a Shunpike. I don't know why anyone would take 376 unless they lived so close to it that it just made that much sense for them. But that is a very empty road when I drove it.
And if you're going to Ohio, the tolls on the Pennsylvania Turnpike main line are the same if you're getting off at 376 versus 79 because of the way that the system works out there. So
nice.
You don't
actually, they ended the ticket section further east from there, and so it's only you get a barrier toll coming in east out of Ohio, which is steep, but
to 79, even though you're on the Turnpike for almost 3 times as long, you don't pay anymore. So keep that in mind.
So that's 376. We definitely should discuss that Ohio barrier toll. But to finish with these spurs, 576, it's barely a road even at this point. I don't know. Yeah. You don't really need to. If you're going to the airport, just use the way you were going before, I suppose.
Yeah.
Ramp. If you do take 43 into West Virginia, just be very happy that the folks in West Virginia decided not to toll that. There was some reason behind that. I think they wanted to use all electronic tolling, but then they realized state law doesn't support that, or something where West Virginia basically said, we'll just pay for this road. We won't toll it.
It's only a few miles south of the state line.
43 is an interesting one in that, if you're through traffic, you'd be taking 79 anyway. It's really serving Uniontown and some of the Brownsville, some of the towns up that way. So you're not shunpiking the whole thing. Either you're a road geek and you want to drive it, you're through traffic and you're not even thinking about it, or you're local traffic and then your options are limited to non-freeway choices, whether you're on 51 or 88 or some other combination of local roads. If you're local, shunpiking is pretty much that, I would think.
Right. It also is worth noting there is a free section of 43 just
Uniontown,
south of I-70, and that's because, right, that is the oldest section that was built to be part of the Mon Valley Expressway, which was never planned as a toll road. The reason other sections are tolled is because they were built more recently, funded by those tolls.
And the Uniontown bypass is US 119. I believe that whole part is free also.
Yeah, and that is free for the same reason. That was built as US 119.
Right. And 376 has one free section to it as well, I believe.
Well, no, 376 only has the one tolled section near Newcastle. It's right. The entire rest of the road is free.
Yeah.
So then 66 is the one that we haven't touched on yet.
Yeah, well, 66 is part of Corridor M, and
here we go. Here's corridors again.
Yep. I think that
corridor.
This is one of the two ADHS corridors that requires a toll in order to clinch it.
That's interesting. What's the other one?
L. L has the only remaining ramp toll on the West Virginia Turnpike.
Oh, right. Yeah. Okay, that makes sense.
So, yeah, for 66, you could start off on 119. It's good into Greensburg. Then you're either going through Greensburg onto Old 66, or you're trying to bypass it on 30, and then you've got to take local streets back around. So it gets less good if you're trying to go the whole way on 66. But I don't know how else you shunpike, because every road goes into Greensburg pretty much.
It depends on where you're coming from, too, because if you're coming from Monroeville, you would never be going this way anyway. You'd be taking 22 the whole way. So long distance, you would just stay on 22. If you're coming from the south, yeah, you might have some options there.
Do we need to talk about the Turnpike main line at all?
Well, yeah, let's talk about the gateway toll, which is a bit of an experience unto itself because, right, so if you're coming from Ohio, you reach the end of the Ohio Turnpike, you have the toll that is therefore the end of their ticketed system, and you then cross the state line and have this toll barrier where you have to pay a fixed, I believe it's $5 now.
No, it's more than that.
Okay, it's gone up since I was last through it then.
I think it's like, isn't it close to $10 now?
Gotta be.
It's up there now. I forget.
They keep raising it. I can't keep track.
Yeah.
But it's also noteworthy because there is no interchange between these two places, so you will pass through two toll plazas, and there's no way to not have it be both of them. So it's kind of weird that way, and you would think that they could coordinate and just charge you the toll in Ohio rather than making you stop again. But
yeah,
you run
require.
Yeah, the
transition. Run into this in Maryland and Delaware.
The transition between Ohio and Indiana doesn't have this. The transition between the Indiana Toll Road and Chicago Skyway has that same deal. Actually, no, it doesn't, because you can exit at Indianapolis Boulevard. Never mind.
A lot of these cases, there is a free interchange.
Yeah, there is not one in this case. That's right.
Right.
So this gateway toll, it is $6.30 if you have Easy Pass, and if you don't have Easy Pass, your toll by plate invoice will be for $13.
Yay!
Hooray!
All right, so it probably was. I'm pretty sure that if it's $6.30 now, it probably was $5 with Easy Pass because I have Easy Pass. Last I went through it, which would have been a few years ago. So yeah, they keep raising it.
Yeah, it goes up every year. Doesn't it go up like 5% a year now?
Something like that.
Yeah.
And to shunpike it, you're going down
You're going down.
If you're already on the Ohio Turnpike, you're already paying for it, but you would have to get off the Ohio Turnpike. I'm thinking you're taking 7 to 14 and then Pennsylvania 351. You got to get back to that next interchange there.
And what's really interesting is if you're coming from Youngstown down 680, you get to the Ohio Turnpike, you pull a ticket, but you can only go east through that double toll plaza. So there's only one toll listed on that ticket, which is to the east end of the Ohio Turnpike.
Oh.
You have to stop a second time, pay that toll, and then stop a third time to enter Pennsylvania.
So wait, now I'm curious about this. If anyone has any idea what these tickets look like, because I've gone that way, but only with an Easy Pass. So what are they? Is it just the normal ticket with every other interchange blanked out saying no U-turn?
I don't know. I'm in the same boat as you.
Okay.
Yeah, I've never seen a ticket out that way, so I don't know.
I wouldn't be surprised if it had every destination listed and they just, because it was easier that way, and it's not like you're gonna ever get there.
Jack, you probably should go soon because I think Ohio is actually doing something to that. They're making their state line toll westbound only fixed barrier. They're putting just a ramp toll at 680 because those ramps are to and from the east only. Or no toll at 680 because westbound you'd pay the state line toll coming in, and eastbound you'd pay the Pennsylvania state line toll. So they're basically doing the Ohio toll would be a state line toll similar to what's at Pennsylvania, and then somewhere in the Youngstown area they would have a barrier where the ticket system would begin, although they're probably holding off on this until they figure out what they're doing with all electronic.
I gotta think
it would make sense to just do both of those things at the same time.
All right.
Anyway, we're getting out of scope here. Let's not worry about Ohio for now.
Yeah, that'll be next year. What do we want to do at this point, guys? Do we want to do Delaware and then call it a night?
Let's
that's the plan. So let's talk
I want
about
to finish
Delaware.
the Pennsylvania Turnpike first. Where is the western barrier toll of the ticket system?
Cranberry.
Just east of 79.
Just east of 79. So how would you want to go through Pittsburgh to Shunpike? I feel like just because you can doesn't mean you really want to.
I've done it before. It is, from an urban scenery standpoint, going through Pittsburgh on 79, 279, 376 is awesome if you know the traffic.
Yeah.
You would not go that way if there's any traffic. But therefore, you would basically, you pay that state line toll coming in from Ohio, which you'd have to pay anyway. You're using as much of the turnpike as you can, including the free sections between 376 and 79. And then you're skipping the first couple of exits on the ticket system, which, by doing that, that's 28 to 57. That's like 30 something. That's probably a good $3 or $4 you're saving right there.
Yeah, I enjoy the urban scenery.
It would be faster to just take 376 the whole way rather than going to 79, though.
But then you have to
pay. Toll.
Then you have to pay for 376.
We're Shunpiking here.
It was
279.
Toll south of the turnpike, right? Okay, yeah.
I generally have had the problems on 376. Unfortunately, I've never been there when the tunnel's been closed, but that you do not want to be on 376. That's worth to pay the toll if the tunnel's closed. East of there to get home, especially now that it's all 4 lanes, 22 to 99 to 80. And 22 moves very well. That was reconstructed in the mid to late 2000s to go
another
from
ADHS corridor.
Yep, the whole 22-119 concurrency was 2 lanes, and the rest of 22 was 4 lanes. It was like, why'd you take the heaviest traffic section and wait till last? But it's a really nice drive. I highly recommend that drive anyway. So you don't lose much time. You get a lot of scenery out of it.
22 east of 99 is it's not 4 lanes, but it's not a bad road at all.
Yes, it is.
I've never had a problem with it getting through.
Steve just has problems with everything in Pennsylvania.
And that.
That is.
I would take 99 to 322 at that point if I'm trying to get to Harrisburg. I wouldn't.
Right, that's right. That's probably faster anyway.
And then once you get to Harrisburg, then 78 over to good old New Jersey.
Yeah.
So Delaware.
Delaware.
You want to do Delaware?
Let's destroy Delaware.
All right. I know that one of your favorite toll plazas in all existence exists within Delaware. So
Punch and run. What?
Well, I know that I know Mike referenced this one as being one of the easier ones to bypass, and I think that's part of the reason why we talk about it so much.
Yeah, Mike, have at it. You take this one.
Mike, this is your field.
So the Delaware Turnpike has a barrier toll at the Maryland-Delaware state line, just in Delaware, and there used to be ramp tolls at all the northbound on-ramps and southbound off-ramps, but same deal in Maryland. The locals complained, and the ramp tolls disappeared, so all the locals could use the road for free, and all the out-of-state people would have to pay. The toll was always, up until the late 1990s, was $1.25. Not that big a deal, but kind of still annoying just in principle that they're charging a toll just across the state line. When Delaware first got Easy Pass in fall of 1998, which is my freshman year of college, so I remember it well, they decided they were going to jack the toll up to $2, but if you had Easy Pass, you would still pay the old $1.25. And then sometime in the mid-2000s, 2005-ish, 2004, they raised it to $3, and they eliminated the Easy Pass discount. So if you had Easy Pass, your toll all of a sudden went from $1.25 to $3, and now it's $4, which is just kind of ridiculous. Route 279, Route 4, and Route 896 in Delaware, that's the most obvious route to bypass it. It takes no more than about 5 minutes or so than just going straight through, and a lot of people do that. And there are some other routes like Welsh Tract, Chestnut Hill Road, and these little local roads, and you see plates from all up and down the East Coast.
Yeah, I usually use Chestnut Hill Road myself.
And
I do, but now they've eliminated the stop sign left turn at 279. You have to go to the next light and U-turn. I still think it's faster. I do want to throw a shout out to Mad Max, which is on the corner of Chestnut Hill Road, an exemplary mac and cheese place, and totally worth getting off the highway for.
Awesome. So
even if you're not a Shunpiker, you also get cheap gas along that stretch. There's reasons to get out there.
Wait, so you can't make a left turn onto 279 from Iron Hill Road anymore?
No, you have to make a right.
Oh, that's lame.
Yeah. They're on to you guys.
I usually use the state routes just because I like to stop at the Wawa and just inside the Maryland state line. But yeah, there's a lot of good ways to bypass these. All of these roads are posted no heavy trucks because DelDOT is they're losing enough money on all the cars that are bypassing. They definitely don't want to lose the big bucks on the trucks. But
I guess you can still make a left off of Otis Chapel Road, though, I assume.
Yeah, that's a signal, I think. So yeah.
Yeah. So all right, so rather than just taking Chestnut Hill through to Iron Hill, you make the right on Otis Chapel instead now. Okay, I'll just have to remember that next time I'm going that way.
Iron Hill was faster because you didn't have to wait through any lights. You make the left and you're almost at 95 again. Now, now you've got to sit through more lights. It's not bad. You get there, you get to 277. That left turn light triggers fairly regularly, so you're not waiting very long. I do want to touch on Maryland because if you're heading back from Baltimore, you've got the Susquehanna River tolls, and then you've also got the border toll. So I take those as a 2-for-1 deal. I'm on Route 1. I take 273 east into Newark, and I'll just stay on 273 to get back to 95 at that point. So it's a longer overall detour for that whole stretch. 273 moves quite well. 1 tends to move quite well, so you don't lose a whole lot of time. Newark is, I always hit it late at night so I don't deal with the traffic, but that would be the one trouble spot if you're going there.
So
and depending on where you're going to, if you a longer distance Shunpike just involves sort of taking 1 to 202, and then now that does dump you into how do I get around that part of the Turnpike though?
You could do 1 to 322 to 295.
That also works, except that part of 322 between 95 and 1 kind of sucks.
They've just upgraded it. It's not half as bad now as it used to be.
Okay, maybe I should try it again then.
Try it again.
Yeah, I'm only bypassing the Newark toll because, we'll cover this, I guess, when we have a Maryland webinar, but there's an easy pass solution for the Susquehanna toll in Maryland.
Ooh, save that teaser for next time, Mike.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right,
Delaware.
So still in Delaware, right. We've got...
So we've talked about I-95 and the infamous Newark toll. We've also got a couple other toll roads and a toll bridge that we should mention in passing. Anyone?
I assume the toll bridge we're talking something on Route 1 because we've already touched on the magnificent Delaware Memorial Bridge.
No, we haven't.
Yeah, I mentioned it.
They'll remember.
Well, I didn't put it on the slide, so we weren't really discussing DRBA at that point. But
see, now you need to have another 10-minute rant.
Yeah, see,
everything.
You people don't pay attention. My God, you guys suck.
Everything we touched on before.
All of you, go screw. Anyway, all right, that's my rant for this week. All right, what were we saying? I'm sorry.
Everything for DRPA bridges applies to Delaware Memorial. You just go through Pennsylvania and you avoid it. So on to Route 1 and 301 now.
Yeah. So we were talking
Delaware 1
yeah.
actually on toll bridge because the bridge is over the Chesapeake and Delaware Canal, which is owned by the Army Corps of Engineers. And because the canal is owned by the Army Corps of Engineers, there's some stipulation that the bridges have to be owned by them too. And the federal government said no tolls. But Delaware obviously used toll revenue to finance Delaware 1. So basically the compromise they came up with is we're going to build the bridge and you can have your tolls, but there has to be an exit ramp between the bridge and the toll, which is the South St. George's loop ramp, which allows you to basically cross the bridge and then just before the toll plaza, you get off and cut over to 13 and bypass the tolls, which on a weekday, the tolls are at the mainline tolls on Route 1 are only $1 each. So they're almost, it's questionable whether it's even worth it to Shunpike.
No, it's not.
Well, okay, fine. But on weekends, the toll rate goes up to $3 to try to soak all those beach people from Philly that are going down to the Delaware shore. So when it's $3 a pop, yeah, it's definitely worth it, especially since the first interchange south of there at Route 896, the ramp toll to get on going south after the mainline toll is only 50 cents. So you save $2.50 just by taking that short detour, or you could go down a little bit further and skip it entirely.
Right, and it's also worth noting that this toll plaza is directly south of the C&D Canal Bridge, but that's the furthest north, I believe, that there are actually any tolls. It's free north of there.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. So
when I'm going,
so you can take one down to that point from 95 even.
Yeah. So the trick that I implement if I'm ever going to, say, Middletown is if you're going there, it's a wash as far as the toll rate is concerned between 1 and 301. You just get off at South Middletown on 301, and it's cost you the same as going through the plaza on 1 at Biddle's Corner. If it's a weekend, however, and the toll on 1 is $3, then I will definitely take 301 down to South Middletown. On the weekdays, I'm more tempted to take 1 down to Odessa and then go west. But on the weekends, I'm definitely taking.
To steer yourself around tolls. Since when do you ever do this?
This is one of those. This is one of those weird things that I've become aware of over the years. Like I'm not much of a toll skipper myself, but with 301 coming into being, it's a lot more convenient for me to just go that way than take 1 and then slug it out on 299 between Odessa and Middletown, which can get pretty backed up, on weekends especially. So this is something that I started paying attention to, and eventually at some point the light bulb went off in my head, and I'm like, gee, if I go 301, I actually save a couple bucks and I get there a lot faster in the process.
If you want a different way to DC, and you don't have to, we could talk about Maryland tolls next time, but there's a nice alternative to DC that involves shunpiking, And in Delaware, it involves getting over to 301. Now that they built the new 301, they've put a few roundabouts on this way, but you would take that same loop ramp. Instead of going to 13, you used to just make a left. Now with the roundabouts, you may want to take 13 to 896, and then you get on Old 301 from there, and you have to deal with getting into Maryland now. So you're still on Old 301 a bit longer, but where 299 meets it, the lovely town named Sassafras, you can get on there and skip all of the tolled section of 301 in Delaware.
Now, if you don't want to skip all the tolls on 301, but you want to get like 90% of the road for 1/4 of the price, take 301 to the South Middletown exit 2, I believe, and then use Route 29 into Maryland and Sassafras Road to connect back to 301. The ramp toll there at the South Middletown exit is only $1, whereas the state line toll matches the Delaware Turnpike is $4. So.
And I think they set that rate intentionally for that purpose, right?
This way they charge the out-of-staters more, right? And it's worth noting again, you cannot do this if you're a truck. The Sassafras Road does not allow trucks except for local delivery.
All of the Delaware side they put in truck restrictions to prevent any shunpiking by trucks.
Of course they did.
And I do believe a Delaware state trooper likes to hang out on Sassafras Road. I have it on good authority that the police
Delaware or Maryland, because that's in Maryland.
Or whatever that connecting road is in Delaware.
Yeah, I if I'm a truck, I would recommend 291 to Delaware 6 and go up 13 that way to get around it. You're far enough away; they're not going to look for you.
The other interesting thing about this is that, usually we're used to in cases where you'll see a sign that might say something like last exit before toll. But due to the configuration here, if you're heading northbound, there isn't actually a last exit before toll. There's simply last intersection before toll, right? Is that intersection with Sassafras Road? You need to make a turn there. If you keep going straight ahead, you find your way into the toll plaza. And fortunately, they have installed some signs to warn people of this.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a rude awakening. Those signs that Anthony refers to, they're, I think, 11 and 7 miles before the state line, and it says 301 toll road begins 7 miles ahead. But that point where the toll road begins is well past the last turnoff, which is a good 2 miles or so into Maryland. So if you're not paying attention, the big cue is that Sassafras Road is right at the way station on southbound 301 coming into Maryland. So when you see driving up at night, you see all the lights for the way station off on the left, that's where you need to be prepared to make your turn. Otherwise, you're going to be paying $4 with Easy Pass and a couple dollars more without.
Yeah. Yeah, and we should mention, just for clarity's sake, that there are 2 toll plazas on Route 1. There's the one up by the C&D Canal, and then there's the one further south, the one that's actually on this video right now.
Right, Biddle's Corner, and then what's the other one called?
Dover.
They have a name for it. It's just called Dover. All right.
I think they just call it Dover. Yeah. So you're going through 2 plazas. The toll rate at each is triple the weekday rate on weekends. So your Shunpike in that case, and I've done this myself if I'm going down what I like to call down south in Delaware, is just to stay on 13 once I get off at the south end of the canal bridge. And
I think there's one stretch of one between those 2 that you can use for one exit and get on and get off again. So there are free movements along Route 1. Yeah, unlike roads like the ACX, for instance. It doesn't save you much time overall because you still have to make all the turns, but
yeah.
I've done it.
Yeah, so like you can, for instance, get on again at Odessa and get off at Townsend, or Smyrna rather, and that's a free movement. I think after that, it's all toll movements. You have to pay either a ramp toll or a mainline toll. But that section there that I just highlighted, that's about an 8 or 9 mile stretch of one that you can use without a toll.
And you can get on at Dover again.
So let me talk about the ramp tolls real quick. These ramp tolls, the southern section of Route 1 was conceived before Easy Pass was really a thing, and these ramp tolls would actually, if you're taking a ramp pointing away so getting on away from the toll plaza or getting off heading towards the toll plaza, you would pay a toll, usually in coins. But if you were going the other way, so getting on heading towards the toll plaza or getting off after you've already paid at the main toll plaza, they would give you a refund, so to speak, for a short trip. So there were actually machines where you would pull up to the machine, and it was like a ticket dispenser, but what it just did was it dispensed a voucher for 50 cents or 25 cents that, when you came up to the main toll plaza, if you accumulated enough of them or you wanted to use them as cash, so to speak, to pay part of your mainline toll, you could do that. And they eliminated these when Easy Pass came into existence. And very similar to Maine, if you have a Delaware issued Easy Pass where they have your name, your address, they know where to find you if you try to do anything funny. They have a virtual ticket system. So if you get off at one of those exits or you get on at one of the exits heading towards the main toll plaza, you go through both the ramp where there's a reader over the ramp and the main toll plaza, you pay a smaller toll. Now, the way it works if you have an out-of-state Easy Pass, it's really interesting. They don't, I guess because with an out-of-state Easy Pass, they can't process it the same way as like a ticket system transaction. So what they do is they actually they charge you a negative toll onto your account. So you'll go through the main toll plaza, you'll pay $1, and then you'll get off at one of the ramps, and you'll see a negative 50-cent line item on your Easy Pass. There is one big clarifying qualification to this, is that you had to have actually paid money to Delaware sometime in the last month or so. So if you are going through a ramp and you're going under one of the readers where they would give you a 50-cent refund and you have not gone through a mainline toll plaza yet, they will not do anything because they're afraid of fraud, and they're afraid of people like me that have 5 Easy Passes now. Climb all up on the back or going to that ramp hoping to get a 50-cent credit on every single one of those. So you have to have actually made a payment at a Delaware toll plaza sometime recently in order to actually get that refund onto your account.
Right, so this was mentioned in the chat as well, but right, this whole refund after the mainline toll plaza or discount voucher system is also used on a couple of the turnpikes in Oklahoma.
Yes,
they have a similar setup there.
Yeah,
okay.
But again, that's future episode material.
Yes.
I think that's it for Delaware.
I think we hit on everything for Delaware, right?
Other than the ferry, but
who cares?
We're not talking about ferries.
Well, if you ride the Cape May Lewis ferry, your trip is cheaper than it would be if it were privately run because your Delaware Memorial Bridge tolls are subsidizing that.
Ah, okay.
So, like, Cape May Lewis is probably about half the fare of Orient Point, New London, for example, even though they're basically the same distance-wise.
The thing is, they do charge more depending on how many people are in the vehicle with you. I know I have experienced this. The one time I took that ferry, I made a reservation, and I just made it online. I just said, okay, I made the reservation for you. I show up, and I had someone else in the car with me, and the lady at the gate was like, if you got someone with you, you got to pay an extra few bucks. So I was like, okay, fine, here.
Interestingly, some of the toll bridges, the international toll bridges between the U.S. and Canada, actually charge per person as well into the 1990s. But for the most part, nowadays, it's just much more efficient to just charge per vehicle. So
right, and it's kind of weird because it's like, okay, fine. So you have another person in the car with you, so what? It doesn't cost them more at that point to haul you across.
Well, they do. On a ferry, they have to account for all the people in order to make sure they're not going over Coast Guard limits and stuff to make sure they have enough life preservers. So
okay,
they're probably of the mindset that extra people, extra weight, using up capacity on the boat, etc. For a toll bridge, I don't understand why they would charge per person. That just doesn't make sense.
All right.
Well, I think we've hit on everything Delaware-wise. We've hit everything we wanted to in Philadelphia and New York City, and also Western PA. Did we miss anything that we want to touch on before we wrap this up?
We never talked about the Yonkers toll barrier on the Thruway in New York.
Anthony, the floor is yours.
Yeah, so there is a barrier toll on the Thruway located just south of or actually no, just north of the Stu Leonard Drive exit, and yeah, so the easiest way to go around that if you're a car is to use the Sawmill. Otherwise, well, yeah, depending on where you're going. Otherwise, right, it's interesting in that I have never actually paid that toll personally, just because it's so easy to go around. I have only clinched that section of road from having been a passenger with other people who paid it.
Yeah, your Shunpikes there are incredibly easy, either the Sawmill or the Sprain.
Right, and even if you're heading locally, like if you're heading to Ardsley and we're going to get off at exit 7, just get off at 6A instead, and you can take a few local roads up there. It's really not that difficult to do.
Right.
So it's kind of a sucker toll.
Yeah, but it's a sucker toll that I end up paying a lot more frequently than I probably would like. But anyway, They draw me in with that toll sign. They're like, "Hey Dan, guess what's up ahead?"
Yeah. All right. So yeah, that's my note on that.
Okay. We already mentioned the Sawmill toll that existed and no longer exists, right?
Did mention it, yes.
We did. Okay.
So historically, that wouldn't have worked.
The Sprain is still there, but that
Sprain, right? Yeah. Well, right. You can also use 100 to get from the Sprain over to the Thruway, and that actually works fairly well.
You could come down the Sawmill, cut over on Cross County, and get onto the Thruway to the Deegan. That would bypass the 25-cent toll on the Sawmill.
Nah, I would just use 100 at that point. It's easier.
When the toll was 25 cents on the Sawmill, it was only 50 cents at Yonkers.
All right, well.
Anyway. I don't know. I think we covered everything we came here to cover tonight. Guys, you have any parting shots you want to issue? Mike, maybe you want to issue a shot at DelDOT for that Newark toll before you sign off?
I'm not a fan of it, but I'm not going to be too harsh against them, particularly because I know a few folks over at DelDOT that I don't want to make too angry. But I will point out that a common misconception with the Delaware toll is that a lot of people talk about, cars driving around it as toll evasion, and that is not the case. As a driver of a car, I have the right to pick whatever route I feel like.
Yeah. See, toll evasion is a criminal activity. Like, choosing to go the non-toll direction is not a criminal activity. So
yeah, I don't recommend criminal activity for bypassing tolls. The authorities generally don't take too kindly to that. Yeah. Although there are.
But I do want to ask you guys this question about the Delaware toll before we sign off. Isn't it true that DelDOT gets a lot of their revenues for their capital program through that toll? So that in the event of, improvements and construction projects, they would not have to seek as much federal money for these projects as a result of having that toll in place?
That is true. The toll revenue supports all of DelDOT. So I believe it just goes into the general fund, but for DelDOT, there is no Delaware Turnpike Authority or any separate entity. It is just DelDOT, and because nowadays, if you tried to toll an interstate, the feds would force you to enter into an MOA or some other kind of agreement with them stating what the toll money is going to be spent on. But because this was grandfathered into the system because the JFK Memorial Highway existed before it became I-95, they don't have any such restrictions, and they can, as long as they're not choosing to do anything too egregious, nobody can really say anything. I think if they were going to spend it to fund healthcare or something totally unrelated transportation, then maybe the feds might say something. But
Yeah.
as long as it's transportation related, if they have to improve Delaware 1 just north of Ocean City, Maryland, they can use money from I-95.
Yeah, and Delaware is such a small state, obviously, that, you know, any source of significant revenue that they can find, they're never going to give up. Like, that's one thing that I hear a lot about in the groups and on the chat and the forum is all that. It's like, why don't they just get rid of the toll? Well, if they do that, then you lose that revenue stream. And for Delaware, that is a huge part of their pot that they use to spend statewide on infrastructure programs. So
right, especially since for a lot of people, the only experience with Delaware they ever really have is passing through on 95 to the Delaware Memorial Bridge, which, yeah, you know, he goes by like that. It's a blink, but there actually is a bunch more of Delaware south of there. So,
yeah, well, I admit that I have an above average IQ when it comes to Delaware, but still, like that. To me, the idea of getting rid of that toll, I understand that people dislike it, and again, I give everybody the right to bypass it if they choose. That's not my point. My point is that it has a right to exist, and as far as I'm concerned, it ought to continue to exist for that purpose.
Not going to see states give up revenue sources anytime soon. You know, in the last episode, we talked all about the Mass Pike all electronic tolling conversion, and Massachusetts was this close to dropping tolls on the Mass Pike completely, but then the recession in 2009 hit, and they were just like, nope, we're not giving up a source of revenue. We may abolish the Turnpike Authority, but we're not giving up the revenue. And
yeah, why would you? If you think
politics.
About it, like, yeah, but like, you know, that's a major source of your capital program, whether it's at agency level or at state level. So
for a while, they had no tolls west of Springfield because of politics, at least for cars.
They did get rid of that for a little while, yeah.
Yeah.
But that's been all reinstated now, right?
Yeah, they kind of reinstated, I think, even before they went all electronic.
Yeah.
Yep.
did. For a while,
Delaware,
take it and hand it back in for nothing for west of Exit 6.
For Delaware, most of the traffic in Delaware is passing through very quickly on the 95 corridor. So, yeah, you know, they're tolling the same people who they're building most of the improvements for. The rest of the state, if you're not on 95 and you're not going to the beaches, the 2-lane roads, and then you have 13 and 113, that's pretty much all you need. So most of the improvements are happening to the Wilmington area or the roads that are tolled. And so why not toll the roads that you're improving? And the parting shot I want to leave people with is just that. I work in the industry. I have toll agencies as a number of my clients, and they all do good work. And you see the sort of things that they're spending the toll money on, and you realize as a civil engineer what it takes to maintain bridges. Some of these bridges are now 80 years old plus, for example, the George Washington Bridge. An 80-year-old bridge takes a phenomenal amount to maintain, and it would take 12 phenomenal amounts to have to replace it. And you realize, all right, yeah, they're tolling you. There's no good shunpikes, or we giggle to ourselves when we take a shunpike and we look at the majority of traffic going through the toll when they could so easily go around it. But that's not the point. If everybody shunpiked all these tolls, right, at some point you get rid of the toll. It's not effective to keep it. You lose the revenue stream, and you lose the ability to do these projects that are so critical. If we had to maintain the George Washington Bridge without toll revenue, that's a number of other projects around both New Jersey and New York that you couldn't do without raising taxes. And we know how easy it is to raise taxes.
Yeah,
you'd also have to find funding for the PATH train then too.
Yeah,
that's another big thing that the Port Authority is diverting money to.
It puts a huge hit everywhere to get rid of these tolls. So they absolutely have their place, and they're there for a reason. They're there. They provide convenience. You pay for the privilege of having a better ride, and you're paying for projects that keep the region going.
Yeah, and I think.
I guess actually this also reminds me of something else we should touch on regarding the Port Authority. Is that right? When the Port Authority was made to take over the former Hudson and Manhattan Railroad, part of the agreement that got them to do that, because they didn't want to do it, they didn't want to take on that huge financial liability, is they said, okay, we're going to let you demolish the Hudson and Manhattan terminal downtown and build a huge new commercial complex on top of it, which you will then be entitled to collect all of the rent revenue from. And it took a while, but this actually eventually worked out, and they were making a lot of money off of this certain commercial complex. And everything was going great until a certain little something happened in September of 2001. And so it's not a coincidence that the bridge tolls have gone up considerably since then, since they've needed to replace that revenue for...
Tell me more about this event in September 2001, Anthony. What is this year's...
Yeah.
But yeah, that is one of the things about the Port Authority that's a little quirky, is that a lot of the toll revenue does go into the reconstruction of said plot of formerly Hudson River, now Borough of Manhattan. Which I'm sure there's a lot of politics involved there as far as how that ended up happening. But, yeah, agencies have interesting realms that they are responsible for sometimes. And the Port Authority is one of those where you look at it and you're like, okay, it seems straightforward enough with the bridges and tunnels. And then you think about, the plot of land on the southwest side of Manhattan that they also are responsible for. And you're like, oh, shit, there's a little bit more to the story than you realize.
What's interesting is that in Hong Kong, transit agencies maintain a lot of real estate around the stations. So they basically are collecting rent on all the transit-oriented development stuff, and that's something that we don't really see very much of here in the United States, except the Port Authority. That's a perfect example of it.
Right, and in this case, it's because it's not so much the land around the station; it was the land directly on top of the station. It's a little bit more like Madison Square Garden than the land around.
But getting back to what Steve was talking about, as far as funding projects with toll revenue, I know that Steve and I are, we have professional backgrounds as engineers. Mike, you're an engineer too. I mean, you're not exactly in the construction realm, but you are very aware of what goes on there. Anthony, I know you're very well read on this subject as well. I think the four of us can agree that while we might poke fun at the idea of skipping tolls and all that stuff, I do think that we would agree that it is a necessary part of any agency's financing program, as far as being able to afford upkeep and improvements to existing infrastructure and funding long-term improvements as far as replacement goes in the very long term.
Any state, not any agency, because many states
we would have to exclude the Nassau County Bridge Authority from that statement.
Well, fuck them. I don't care about them, but at the state, as Steve says, at the state level, it's I can't imagine trying to build or come up with a financing plan for the bridge between Nyack and Tarrytown without State Thruway Authority tolls being a part of the solution. Like, that's just, it's a non-starter to not have a toll bridge there.
The Turnpike widening in New Jersey from 6 to 9, doubling the capacity of that roadway over 20 plus miles. How do you do that without toll revenue? What other projects don't you do? What bridges do you let fall into the river?
Yeah, I would
another
say
thing that's worth noting is that in a lot of these cases, the toll road is legitimately a much higher quality way of getting around, and so you pay for it, but you get something in exchange. It's not like you're paying money for nothing.
The Jersey Turnpike, I joke about how high the tolls are, but I willingly pay it all the time because I will say that New Jersey Turnpike is probably one of the best engineered roads in all of North America.
The Jersey Turnpike was really the gold standard coming out of World War II as far as a high-speed road. I think the design speeds for that were revolutionary, the curve radii, the bridges. Everything was cutting edge with that road when it was drawn up in the late 40s. And it really
hasn't still tried to do it.
Yeah, and it really hasn't strayed too far from still being gold standard as far as its operations and upkeep. So that's a road that I definitely don't mind paying the toll for. Another one that I want to mention is the New York Thruway, especially west of Syracuse. Because I tell you, driving to and from Buffalo in college in the winter, I loved paying the toll because I knew that part of that toll revenue was going towards snow removal and snow plows and all that stuff. So the Thruway was the one road that I could always rely on being down to blacktop as far as treated and plowed and all that.
That's even with Thruway tolls being much lower than a lot of their peer agencies.
Yeah, Thruway has been relatively economical over the years, although I'm just giving you guys some heads up that's going to change in the future years here. But the Thruway was a bargain for the longest time.
And the Thruway tolls, they're going to change more for those of you without a New York transponder than...
Yes, they are.
Of course.
Yep.
Or multiple New York transponders in Mike's case.
No, that's one.
Yeah. I leave it to Mike to figure out how he's going to get around that. I'm sure he's got a plan already for how he's going to navigate that. But yeah, the other thing that's going to change is the barrier tolls down south. Those are the ones that are going to go up the most, I would think. Especially at the bridge, and then you might see some significant increases in Yonkers and New Rochelle. You may even see a return to car tolling in Spring Valley. Who knows? But
I would be surprised to see two-way tolling return at New Rochelle as well.
I have heard a rumbling that if the Port Authority goes two-way tolling, they would do it at the part of the river known as the Tappan Zee as well, and abolish Spring Valley entirely and just do two-way tolling there instead.
That makes sense generally. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Well, because if you institute two-way tolling on the Hudson in New York City, that has a ripple effect all the way north to Albany, doesn't it?
You have to do it with the Thruway and NYSBA as well at that point. Yeah.
Right. Well, Thruway, yes. NYSBA, maybe not. You're talking much lower tolls to begin with and more separated from the metro area, so I don't think they have to.
Yeah, it's almost insignificant. But yeah, the whole reason for Spring Valley, the truck-only tolls there, was to provide a westbound point to collect money at a variable rate. The Thruway at the Tappan Zee Bridge eastbound, the bridge over the Tappan Zee eastbound, and Spring Valley westbound has one of the first congestion pricing programs for trucks in the country. For trucks that use Easy Pass anyway, the toll rates, they actually vary. So it's cheapest to drive overnight, and during the peak of rush hour, it's very expensive. At the Hudson River, it was easiest to do it at the bridge, obviously, but westbound they needed to do it somewhere, and they chose Spring Valley.
Right. Spring Valley is originally where the ticketed system on the Thruway began, so that's why there's something there to begin with. Yep. You know, they moved that up to Harriman later.
Yeah, so that's the story with that. I don't know, guys. What else do you want to bring up? Is that the floor is yours? If you have, this is an open comment period. If anybody has anything they want to throw out there that we haven't covered yet.
I see some road geek in the comment mentioned that it's the Governor Mario M. Cuomo Bridge. Capiche?
You know, I've heard a rumor that that's true, and in fact, if you go on the shared use path on the bridge, which is now open, and you all should definitely go check it out because you just might find me there, depending on when you go. There are dedication plaques that have that name on it, so
with the middle initial.
It has the middle initial, yes, it does.
Very cool.
Yes, which was the other amusing moment in all of this is that after spending money to change a bunch of signs to say Governor Mario Cuomo Bridge, more of your tax dollars, if you live in New York, were spent changing them again to add the middle initial.
Yeah, clearly somebody, the angel of Cuomo came down from on high and declared that we shall have the letter M in all of the signs. Apparently nobody, I always like to joke that the lead project manager for NISTA is also the governor, but apparently he was not in lockstep with the Thruway as far as how this bridge's name was going to be signed. And so, yes, you had two different iterations of signage. You had a brief period where it was just known as Governor Mario Cuomo Bridge, and now we have switched over again to Governor Mario M. Cuomo Bridge.
And this is the same state that won't spend money replacing, New York 9 and New York 6 and New York 2 shields to correct them.
I wanted to make sure that we didn't confuse it with the other Governor Mario Cuomo.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's one of those weird things. Like, yeah, it's not like who are you confusing it for if you just leave out the middle initial? You know?
That's not the name.
Yeah. Well.
Anyway,
Some people are still ranting about that 3 years later, apparently.
Oh, they'll be ranting about it forever.
Yeah.
Anyway, we talked about the Rhode Island tolling their creeks, and we've had discussions about Pennsylvania attempting to toll their creeks as well on some interstates. We didn't talk about how we would shunpike them if they do go that route in Pennsylvania, and I think given the time right now, it's not worth going into that. But have we heard of this from any other state?
We don't know the locations. They're not finalized anyway.
Well, no, Pennsylvania's announced it.
Stations out there.
Propose, not finalized.
I will say that at least Pennsylvania, they're like semi-major rivers. They're not.
Some of them are, some aren't.
The Schuylkill is a river.
Some are, some aren't. But do we know of this in any other state?
I don't think so.
No, I haven't heard of anything like this happening anywhere else. No.
Other than Rhode Island. Right. Well, and Connecticut proposed it, but is not doing it.
So they proposed it, and when it got shot down because of 684, they never came back with a second proposal. I was a little surprised by that.
Yeah, and as I mentioned on the last episode, that was just because there really was not a lot of political support for the idea. It was mostly Governor Lamont.
Oh, so once it got shot down, they were just like, "Oh, okay, it's shot down. Boo-hoo, move on."
Yeah, the state legislature didn't really want to do it. It was the governor pushing it.
Yeah. Well, I believe you can toll the legislation that allows this. You're allowed to toll bridges and tunnels, so they could have even tolled the tunnel on the Wilbur Cross Parkway as part of that.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, they could have reinstated the toll at, say, the Charter Oak Bridge, for instance. Although I don't know exactly, like, jurisdiction, whether that would have been in violation in the spirit of the law. But
the Charter Oak Bridge isn't an interstate, so they could toll it anyway.
Yeah. Okay.
And they did just spend a lot of money, or they are in the process of spending a lot of money upgrading the connection from 91 North onto the Charter Oak Bridge, which is sorely needed.
Creating a new left exit of all things. But yes, that ramp is a nightmare. So it did need something done to it.
Yes. Yes, Steve.
Oh. I posted the link in the chat to the PennDOT official announcement if people want to see where these various bridges are and decide for themselves whether Nescopec Creek is a major river.
Well, I mean, so Rhode Island exposed a loophole, right, with being able to toll the bridges on 95 and put gantries up next to them. Is this loophole one that the feds are closing or have closed since Rhode Island put this in, or is this still an open season kind of thing?
It's an open loophole for now. I don't know that anyone necessarily is trying to close it either.
It probably wouldn't be closed until the next transportation bill comes out.
Yeah.
And even then, would they?
Yeah. Hey, I was asking...
Sometimes people like loopholes and deliberately leave them open.
Yeah. Well, I was asking Trump for 4 years for an infrastructure bill. Hopefully Biden is going to give us one before the next 4 years is up. Right, Steve? I know you would like that. More money for you guys.
We're doing all right now with gas tax in New Jersey finally at a competitive level with other states. So
yeah.
I'm less anxious for it than I had been, let's say, 5 years ago before they did that.
So,
but
so real
more
quick,
money helps.
Yeah, so real quick on the gas tax thing, because that was an interesting little development that we had where, obviously we're not talking about toll revenue, we're talking about gas tax revenue that goes into a pot for infrastructure capital programs. New Jersey was very bold, I believe, in their action to jump the gas tax by as much as they did. And that money that's generated in that pot goes to NJDOT reserves, right? It doesn't go to NJTA because they're still operating off of their toll base.
Right. I mean, there was some drama before that, too, in terms of politics. Is that the gas tax in New Jersey had not gone up in a long time. It was very cheap compared to any other state in the Northeast, really. And Governor Christie had campaigned on a promise that he was not going to raise it. Now, unfortunately, the state's transportation fund was a little dry, partly because of their gas tax being so low.
Little.
And so there were some maneuvers made to avoid raising it. This initially was a major motivating factor behind the cancellation, even after groundbreaking, of the Access to the Region's Core project. That Governor Christie basically wanted to take a lot of that money that was set aside for it and cannibalize it to put it into the state's transportation fund. And unfortunately, he was not able to keep the federal money that was earmarked for it, in spite of trying to, because it was earmarked for that tunnel and only that tunnel. But the other money they were able to repurpose. They also then did some things like having the Port Authority be responsible for the rehab of the Pulaski Skyway, even though that's not the Port Authority's roadway. They just redirected some money from the bridge tolls. There's those bridge tolls again.
It's an approach to a Port Authority facility, so of course it's perfect.
You do get a lot of that revenue sharing in New Jersey between agencies wherever they can justify a toll agency. Like you could probably also get from the Turnpike Authority and say, well, the Pulaski feeds traffic that otherwise would be using the Turnpike to another exit, and so it's there's all sorts of arguments that they make. But one of the things about New Jersey is their trust fund is protected, so any gas tax revenue will go to state transportation projects. It does not get siphoned off to any other uses. Not every state
do have problems with that, yes.
And they actually had to, with the gas tax raise, they had to separately get approved by voters that protection would remain for the increased gas tax, because there was a risk that if voters rejected that, the increased gas tax would be for naught and it could be siphoned off again. But fortunately, the state realized that our people realized that was a good thing to vote for.
Yeah, so like the New Jersey development there with the gas tax, I think is unique to the northeastern states. Like I don't think any other northeastern state that we either talked about tonight or last time has instituted such a steep spike in their gas tax in such a short period of time. Is that
Pennsylvania?
Pennsylvania.
So Pennsylvania did it gradually though.
Yeah, it was still pretty steep though.
Overall, it was steep.
Pretty steep, and it wasn't spread out over that long of a time period.
There's a few years.
Yeah, in the greater scheme of things, what's a few years?
Yeah, there's a few. New Jersey was all at once, and then I think early last year, they raised it again by a bit. So it's now more subject to being tinkered with here instead of lying flat for 20 years. I appreciate that.
I'm fascinated driving between D.C. and Long Island fairly often that the cheapest gas is usually on Long Island.
Wow.
Is it now?
Yeah, because a lot of the stations right off the highway in Maryland are pretty steep. They jack the price off because they're next to the highway for convenience. And then Jersey is definitely not as cheap as it used to be. And then
interesting.
Well, yeah. I mean, they pretty much lost their advantage as far as cheap gas when the gas tax went up, right? Isn't that kind of how that ended up?
Relative to Delaware, yes. Relative to Pennsylvania and New York, no.
Yeah. Yeah, I still fuel up in Delaware whenever I can, because there is still a little bit of an advantage that way. But, yeah, New Jersey is not as advantageous as it was before the tax hike is concerned. And again,
by filling up in Delaware, you can also pump it yourself.
Well, that's true, too. Yeah, see? I do not mind hikes in gas taxes as long as they go towards capital programs for infrastructure improvement, and Steve can back me up on this, but I think that's definitely where the money's going, right?
In New Jersey, it certainly is. I pulled up a gas price heat map, and I can vouch that northern Delaware is about the same as some places in Long Island, and all of that is cheaper than New Jersey in general.
Really? So it's even cheaper, more or less, than if you went over the bridge to Salem County. at this point.
Definitely.
Wow. Okay.
There's one tiny little pocket right in Salem County by the truck stops that is still relatively cheap. And that's about it.
Well, I think next season we'll have to do a how to find cheap gas series. Maybe that'll be our little adventure next time.
That's a moving target, man.
Well, because I know you guys have traveled a lot, and you have a lot to say on that subject too, in addition to the toll subject. But I really want to thank Mike and Anthony and Steve for joining us tonight. It was great to talk with them about toll roads in the states of New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Delaware, and the major metropolitan areas along the way. We had a lot of fun talking for just about. What time is it? Holy crap! We've been on the air for almost 3 hours now talking.
We're having fun.
We are.
We've been on the air for almost 1 hour Mountain Time.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks, Steve. Thanks for keeping track of the time for us.
Formerly Corco time.
Yeah. Soon
Not anymore.
What is he doing right now, by the way? Is he on his way west or east, or what's he doing?
He's in Connecticut.
Right now?
And not paying attention to this stream, so you can forget it.
Well, he's evil then. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, he knew about this, and he didn't tune in anyway, so shame on him.
Yeah.
Guys, thank you so much for doing this. This was a lot of fun.
I agree. Thank you for the invite.
It was great to have you on finally, Mike. You know, we've been trying to get you on for about a year, and this was great to have you on. You had a great debut appearance.
Well, I'll gladly volunteer for the, whenever you get down to DC area to do similar talk.
Ooh, we're going to have to do that because we still have to touch on Maryland, Virginia, the DC metro area, and also the Midwestern Turnpike system, Ohio, Indiana, and Illinois. But we'll do that some other time. Maybe we'll save that for next week. I don't know. But, guys, thank you for your insights. This was a lot of fun doing this. I want to thank also the folks in the live chat who joined us throughout the evening. It was a lot of fun having you along for the ride. And hope you'll check out some of our other live episodes we've done recently and also the episodes that are still to come here in the next few weeks. I'm sure we'll come up with a lot of interesting content for you guys before this season is over. So I think we're going to leave it at this for tonight and for all of us here on the panel and across the Roadway Wiz family of networks. Thank you for joining us. We look forward to seeing you right back here for our next live presentation. Have a good night, folks.
Yep, take care, all.
Bye, everyone.